90 philosophical myths that might be more real than facts. To fall asleep. To what if the deepest truths are hidden inside the lies we gently believed? Not the loud lies, not the obvious ones, but the quiet myths, the bedtime stories grown-ups told their thoughts, that time flows forward, that you are one person, that the world is solid and real. What if those were never facts, just agreements we forgot we made? In this journey, we won't try to wake you up, but to walk you gently through the myths that shaped your mind, until even your doubts begin to dissolve into dreams. You'll hear about paradoxes that twist logic like soft silk, truths that vanish the moment you chase them, and the strange possibility that the unreal might be the only thing that ever made you feel alive. So close your eyes. Let go of certainty. Let these myths whisper you to sleep, not to fool you, but to remind you that even illusions can be sacred. The reality. Behind the myth of reality, it begins quietly, like most truths do. You're not asked to believe or disbelieve, just to notice. The hum of the fan, the softness of the pillow, the gentle, almost imperceptible pull of gravity reminding you that something, somewhere, is real, or at least feels that way. And yet, what if that feeling itself is part of the illusion? Two people sit across from each other on a subway bench. The train hasn't moved in minutes. One of them sighs and says, "You ever get the sense this is all just stage lighting?" The other smiles, not surprised, not amused, just awake. "Yeah," she answers, like a dream that got tired of pretending it wasn't a dream. The myth of reality is not just old, it's foundational. So foundational that most of us don't even realize it is a myth. From the echo of Plato's cave to the quiet rebellion of Descartes, and through the misty thought experiments of Berkeley and Kant, we've been warned. The world might not be what it seems. But the warnings were whispered, not shouted. Because if they shouted, we might have listened. Reality, we're told, is what persists when you stop believing in it. But what if that's backward? What if belief is the glue, and persistence is just the trick of habit? In the dark, without distraction, you start to notice how much of your life is held together, not by certainty, but by pattern. The hallway that always leads to the same kitchen, the face that always smiles the same way, the sky that never forgets its blue. You never quite asked it to be that way. It just was, and so you trusted it. But the mind, clever as it is, favors safety over truth. And if stitching together a coherent world helps us sleepwalk through the day, it will happily fabricate reality from fragments of light, scent, sound. It doesn't need the world to be real. It only needs it to be consistent. A barista hands a cup to a customer who's clearly distracted. "Decaf, oat milk," she says, tapping the name on the cup. "You come in every Tuesday." The man looks up, surprised. "I do?" His voice is soft, a little uncertain. "I don't even remember yesterday." The barista nods, then turns to the next order. Reality often survives not by being real, but by being routine. Philosophers call this phenomenal coherence, the idea that what we call real is simply what behaves in a predictable way. The cup feels warm, so it must be. The floor doesn't fall away, so it must exist. But none of that proves that the cup, or the floor, or the morning even exists outside your experience. It only proves that your experience is persuasive. And if that's true, what happens to pain, to love, to death? Are they facts or just convincing performances, well rehearsed and exquisitely repeated? Tonight, this question doesn't need an answer. It only needs space. a little breathing room between the thought and the dream. So lie back, just a little more now. If the world can trick you into thinking it's always been here, and if the dream can make you feel like it's real, just for a moment, then maybe what matters isn't what's true, but what's true enough to touch. The train moves. Neither of them notices. One is already asleep, and the other is watching her reflection in the window. It blinks a second too late. Let that thought drift with you now, not to disturb you, just to remind you. Some illusions don't need to be broken. They only need to be noticed softly. And with that, let's follow this quiet thread into the next paradox. The myth of a continuous self. You wake up. The light hits your face, and in that first breath of morning, there's a quiet certainty. I am still me. The person who made that mistake last week. The one who laughed at a memory yesterday. The one who hopes secretly, quietly, for something better tomorrow. And yet, beneath that comforting illusion, something slips. Are you truly the same person who fell asleep last night? Philosophers have poked at this question for millennia. Heraclitus, the ancient Greek who told us we could never step into the same river twice, wasn't just talking about rivers. He was talking about you, about how everything, your thoughts, your skin, your sense of self, is in motion. Thousands of years later, Derek Parfit sharpened this view with surgical precision. He suggested that identity might not matter at all in the way we think. If your memories fade, if your body renews, if your preferences shift, what is the you that survives from one moment to the next? You aren't a marble sculpture, carved once and preserved forever. You are closer to a flame, always burning, always changing, never the same twice, yet somehow recognizable. We recognize the continuity not because it's objectively there, but because we need it to be. This myth of a continuous self becomes the scaffolding for our guilt, our pride, our relationships. We say I and carry forward 1,000 yesterdays into every today. But what if that I is just a useful story? If the self is not stable, then strange questions follow. Who is it that suffers when we're hurt? Who is it that loves someone across years of change? If we are nothing more than psychological and biological patterns, does death dissolve something real, or just interrupt a process that was always dissolving? For some, this shatters the fear of death. If there's no fixed me, there is no one to truly end. But for others, it deepens the void, like chasing smoke in the dark, realizing that no part of you is as solid as you thought. And still, we cling. The child we were, the teenager we resented, the adult we've become, they blur, blend, and flow like water. The mind resists this fluidity, longing for anchor points. But there may be freedom in letting go, in seeing ourselves not as nouns, but as verbs, not as things, but as happenings. The river of self flows on, even if no drop stays the same. We name it, believe in it, even love it. But what we love might be the pattern, not the permanence. Let's continue. If the self is not constant, what about time itself? Could that, too, be a myth, just waiting to be undone? The arrow that never moves. A breath lingers, not quite arriving, not quite leaving, just hovering, like a held note in a song that never ends. Someone once asked, can an arrow in flight be stopped by thought alone? And if not stopped, then at least paused, if only for a moment, inside the folds of a question no one finishes asking. It's late. Two people sit quietly on a balcony, warm mugs between their palms, steam coiling like memory in the air. One asks, if I only notice I'm moving when I stop, Am I ever really moving at all? The other smiles, staring at the lights across the street. I sometimes feel like my whole life is just a blur of pauses. Zeno thought so too. In his paradox, the arrow never truly moves. If time is a collection of separate, frozen instants, tiny still photos stacked endlessly, then in each of those moments, the arrow simply is. It has a position, a location, but not movement. Movement requires change, and a frozen instant, by definition, doesn't change. So how can movement ever be real if it's made of pieces that don't move? It's like walking through a gallery of your own life, where each frame shows you sitting, standing, smiling, hurting, but never in motion. If every second is a snapshot, what fills the space between? If motion is an illusion made from stillness, what else do we take for granted simply because it flows too smoothly to question? There's a kind of unease in this thought, and yet, it's also oddly calming. If we are not racing forward, but rather flickering through slices of stillness, then perhaps time isn't something we must chase or fear losing. Maybe everything is already quietly in place, like constellations in the sky, appearing to drift when they're anchored far beyond us. The person on the balcony sets down their mug and asks gently, "Have you ever felt like your whole day was just one long instant?" Their friend nods, "Especially when I'm waiting for something or someone." Do you think waiting happens, or is it just not happening, stretched thin? And this too becomes part of the paradox. Where is the line between what moves and what merely changes position in our minds? Even now, as you listen, the seconds pass, but you don't see them go. You feel them more than you notice them. You ride them like waves that never crest. Between every breath and blink, something subtle vanishes, but you never feel the absence. So then, are we moving, or simply being redrawn again and again by a hand we cannot see? Let that question settle like dusk into your thoughts, and if your eyes begin to close, know this: you are not missing the moment. You are the stillness that frames it. Now, we drift onward, because maybe the arrow was never flying. Maybe it had already landed before we even knew it had been let go. So next, what if everything that happens already has? The future that created the past. There's something odd about the way the universe looks back at us. It's subtle, quiet, like a shadow that only moves when you turn your head. But maybe it's always been watching, not because it wants to, but because it must. The moment you open your eyes, the stars exist. The moment you measure the world, it becomes real. What if, in the deepest folds of reality, it's not time that flows forward, but attention? A woman turns over in bed and says to her partner, "You ever get the feeling that everything around us is too perfect?" He stares at the ceiling, like how the constants in physics line up just right for life. She nods, like it all knew we were coming. This thought, the anthropic principle, isn't just poetic, it's scientific philosophy. In its boldest interpretations, it dares to whisper that the universe had to form the way it did, because you would eventually be here to observe it. That your consciousness is not the product of the cosmos, but its co-author. Time doesn't just move forward like an arrow. Maybe it loops, or folds, or waits to unfold until someone is present to witness the bloom. The idea isn't comfortable. It reverses the hierarchy we cling to. You're not merely an accidental byproduct of blind physics. You might be the lens that gives form to what we call the past. Like a novel that only becomes a story once it's read, the universe may be a book that only exists once its pages are turned by you. He whispers again, "So, are we the meaning or the reader?" She replies, maybe both. Maybe meaning can't happen until someone asks for it. It's not about solipsism or arrogance. It's about a quiet awe. If consciousness is essential to existence, not an afterthought but a co-creator, then time becomes something more than hours and days. It becomes reflective. Every choice, every thought, every blink of your eye might ripple backwards, shaping the conditions that allowed this very moment to form. Maybe the laws of physics only seem fixed because they've been tuned from a future we haven't arrived at yet. Maybe the reason the Big Bang happened is because you, one day, would need a beginning. So the next time you wonder why you were born into this particular slice of space and time, consider this. Maybe the past only makes sense because you are the one remembering it. And perhaps your memory, like your breath, moves both forward and backward through the fabric of what we call reality. When you blink again, realize this might not just be the present unfolding, but the past finalizing itself, just for you. Now let's wander deeper, into a truth that hides behind every choice you make. The freedom that isn't free. You pause at the coffee counter, eyes moving over identical options. Small, medium, or large, oat milk or cream. And yet, somewhere beneath that moment of choice, something already decided. The hand reaches, the mouth speaks, but the decision? It had already bloomed in silence before your awareness caught up. Do you ever feel like you're choosing something, but also like it was never really a choice? A girl asks her friend across a cafe table. Yeah, he says after a moment, like I already knew what I'd say before I said it. For centuries, we've cherished the idea of free will like a flame in the dark, that no matter what happens around us, we are the ones steering the ship. But what if we're just passengers, watching the stars move, mistaking the sky's rhythm for our own direction? Spinoza once wrote that freedom is understanding necessity, that to truly see how everything follows everything else, not from chaos, but from an elegant inevitability, is to be liberated from illusion. And in modern labs, blinking screens tell us something eerily similar. Decisions register in the brain milliseconds before we become aware of them. Before you say yes, your neurons already have. Does that mean you are not the author of your life? Or just that the story was written with ink deeper than language? There's something strangely comforting in this thought, like watching waves crash and realizing they don't need your permission. Maybe you aren't broken when you act out of habit. Maybe guilt softens when you see the strings, or perhaps it deepens, knowing you could not have done otherwise. And yet, you still feel it. The tug of, I should have, the whisper of, next time I'll. Could it be that responsibility isn't about authorship, but about awareness? That seeing the river doesn't stop the current, but lets you swim with a little more grace? On a quiet train ride home, an older woman once said to a stranger beside her, I always thought I chose to become a teacher, but looking back, every road pointed here. It feels less like a decision, more like remembering something I was already meant to do. Maybe that's what we are. Echoes of possibilities crystallizing in time, each footstep prefigured, yet somehow still ours to feel. And so if tonight you wonder whether you truly chose to play this video, ask yourself gently, did it feel like a decision or like gravity pulling your thoughts towards something inevitable? You thought you clicked this on your own, but perhaps something in you was always going to. And now we drift forward toward another myth, one that gently undoes the beginning itself. The beginning that never was. You've probably heard it your whole life, Every story has a beginning, a spark, a bang, a moment when everything began. But what if the universe never actually started? Not in the way we think of beginnings. Maybe we've only been trained to look for origins because stories comfort us. A beginning makes sense, but sense too might be a myth. I thought the Big Bang was the start of everything, she says, lying beside him in the dark, her voice softened by the quiet rhythm of the ceiling fan. He answers gently, maybe it's not a bang. Maybe it's a loop or a ripple. Maybe we're not on the first page. We're in the middle of a book with no first page. She laughs, not out of humor, but confusion. Then how would you even know you're alive? I wouldn't. I'd just be part of a paragraph that never asked to begin. The Kalam cosmological argument tells us that everything that begins must have a cause. But what if we misunderstood what it means to begin? Some branches of physics, like loop quantum gravity, suggest time isn't something flowing like a river, but something granular, like a frozen lake made of moments. Eternalism, another theory, holds that all points in time exist equally. Past, present, future. All stitched together like scenes in a film reel that we watch one frame at a time. Not because that's the way reality is, but because that's the way our minds are built to perceive it. Close your eyes and remember your earliest memory. Do you feel like that child still lives inside you? Or is that moment just a page you once read, lingering in the scent of its ink? If all moments exist, if there was no first time, no first breath, then perhaps your birth wasn't an entry, but a point on a circle. And if there was no beginning, then what does that say about endings? Do they exist either, or are they just our way of coping with change, labeling a fade as a stop? Maybe nothing ever ends. It just stops being observed, like a star that still burns light years away, though we can no longer see it. You might think you move forward, but perhaps you're simply orbiting a point you've never left. We're stuck, she whispers, her words dissolving into the dark, in a dream that doesn't start or end. Maybe, he says, but if it's a dream, at least we're dreaming it together. Tonight, when silence thickens around you like fog, ask yourself, where did this all begin? Can you point to it? Or is it just a story your memory is whispering to itself, hoping it'll make the night feel less endless? Now drift with me into the next idea, where existence itself may not be a requirement at all. The myth of something rather than nothing. There's a kind of silence that isn't quiet. It hums with presence, even when nothing is said, like the stillness in a room before someone speaks, or the weight of the air just before a storm. That's the kind of silence we touch when we ask, why is there something instead of nothing? It's a question that never ages. Leibniz called it the first question that deserves an answer. Physicists turn their telescopes toward quantum vacuums trying to hear it, and mystics sit in mountain caves, listening inward for its echo. But every answer we offer feels like using words to explain why breath exists. Late one night, on a train that hadn't moved for 20 minutes, two strangers spoke softly near the window. You ever think, one asked, what it would mean if nothing ever existed? The other paused. Isn't that already a contradiction? Because perhaps nothing was never real, not truly. In physics, even the most absolute void still boils with virtual particles, flickering in and out like fireflies. In language, we only speak of nothing by defining it as the absence of something, so it's still measured in relation to being. It's like trying to describe the edge of a shadow without mentioning the light that cast it. Could it be, then, that the idea of nothingness is a myth we've invented to make sense of beginnings? And if so, maybe there never was a beginning. Maybe being never had an opposite to compete with. Maybe existence simply is, not because it defeated nothingness, but because it never had to. It's tempting to romanticize our own presence as a miracle. But what if your existence is not a spark in the dark, but the ocean itself? Something that was always there in some form, reshaping, reforming, remembering itself through you. One person might sit on a park bench and whisper to a stranger, "I feel like I don't belong anywhere." And the stranger might reply, "Maybe that's because you belong to everything." This perspective isn't meant to diminish you. On the contrary, it grounds you. If non-existence was never truly an option, then you are not a fragile visitor in this universe. You are its continuation, a wave in its ongoing tide. That doesn't make life less precious. It makes it more intimate. And just as the sun never questions why it shines, maybe you don't need to wonder why you're here. You are. That might be the only necessary truth. Let your breath slow now. The weight of your body is evidence. You're part of something, and maybe that something has never stopped becoming. Next, we'll move toward a myth where death is not a door closing, but a curtain rising, revealing a stage behind the stage, where the show might still be going on. Death may not exist. The lights don't go out. They just shift. One scene fades, another quietly takes its place. That's what he said, an old man on a park bench, tossing breadcrumbs to pigeons like memories he no longer feared. "You don't stop," he said. "You just change rooms." We often hold death like a blade suspended above us, its silence shaping how we live, how we fear, how we cling. But what if we've misunderstood the whole architecture of ending? What if death isn't the full stop we imagine it to be, but a comma in a sentence we haven't finished reading? According to Dr. Robert Lanza, the founder of biocentrism, our understanding of death is rooted in a misconception that consciousness is the product of biology. But what if it's the other way around? In biocentrism, consciousness isn't something the brain produces, like electricity from a generator. It's the fundamental layer of reality, and matter organizes itself around it. Death, then, isn't a destination. It's a misreading of a much deeper shift in perception. So when people die, a woman asks quietly as she sits beside the man on the bench, "Where do they go?" He doesn't look at her, just keeps tossing crumbs. They don't. That's the thing. They're still here, just not in the way we expect to find them. Think of dreams. One moment you're falling through a sky of violet fog. The next you're in a room that smells like your childhood. The mind doesn't register a collapse. It flows. In the biocentric view, death may work the same way. Not a void, but a redirection. Not extinction, but translation. The consciousness continues, perhaps in another timeline, another framework of laws, another unfolding of you. If this is true, if we never really die, then maybe the deepest fear we carry is misaligned. Maybe we fear not the end, but the mystery of continuation. Maybe it's not the darkness we dread, but the unending light we haven't learned to see clearly. "Do you ever get tired?" she asks him, not of life, but of always waking up somewhere. He smiles faintly. "Only when I forget that it's all the same dream, just wearing different clothes." And so, when the lights dim in your world, remember, it might only be so that another world, equally real, might glow into focus. You don't vanish. You just shift vantage points. Next, let's ask something more unsettling. If you don't die, if you just flow, Was there ever a solid you in the first place? Or have you always been a mirage chasing its own reflection in a river that never stops moving? The observer that never was. There's a moment, right before sleep takes you, when you're still aware of your thoughts, but no longer steering them. They drift like paper boats on a quiet lake. One thought after another, soft and slow. And somewhere in that stillness, a question bubbles up, not loudly, but curiously, like a breeze brushing past your shoulder. Who is it that's noticing all of this? A woman once paused mid-conversation, her coffee cooling beside her. She looked out the window and said, "Sometimes I feel like I'm not really here, just watching it all happen from a few feet back." Her friend smiled gently, stirring her drink. Maybe you are. Or maybe there's no watcher at all, just the watching. In some traditions, the observer isn't the hero, it's the illusion. What we call self, the voice in our head, the person behind the eyes, isn't a captain at the helm. It's the wake of a ship that steers itself. Patterns of perception, thoughts sparked by chemicals, feelings bubbling up from old memories. The mind does its dance, and we call it me. Neuroscience quietly nods. No fixed self has been found in the brain, only scattered regions firing in harmony. No single point of consciousness, just activity. Awareness, yes, but no owner of it. It's like a rainbow. You see it, it dazzles you, but try to approach it, and it vanishes. It never had a location, just conditions. Light, water, a certain angle of view. You didn't create it, and you can't hold it. Maybe the observer is the same, not someone who watches, but a result of watching itself. And yet, life keeps asking for someone to show up. A child needs comforting. A stranger holds the door and says, "I think this elevator's going up, are you?" These are moments that seem to confirm a self, because there's someone answering. But are those responses really you, or just patterns continuing? What if there's only watching, no watcher, only experiencing, no experiencer? Could it be that consciousness is a field, not a point? Not inside your head, but something your brain tunes into, like a radio signal. Not a bulb in the skull, but a mirror catching light from somewhere else. You don't need to resolve this tonight. In fact, it's better if you don't. Let it hang, soft as mist, quiet as breath. Maybe this is the kind of emptiness that holds, not hollows. A blank page that writes back when you touch it. And if, at any point, your thoughts wander or sleep pulls you away, that's all right. You can return here any time. The watching will continue, whether or not there's someone doing the watching. Let's now drift gently into the next myth, the one that wonders whether truth itself might be a story that forgot it was written. The truth that lies. It's strange how we chase truth like it's something buried, waiting patiently under the rubble of lies. As if, with enough digging, enough clarity, we could one day arrive at a pure and shining answer, unchanging, undeniable, final. But what if truth is not a treasure buried in darkness, but a mirage rising from our need for certainty? Late-night conversations sometimes hold more weight than textbooks ever could. Do you think there's one real truth to anything? I used to. Now, I think truth might be just a story we've agreed on. For now. So it could change. Maybe it has to change or we break. Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "There are no facts, only interpretations." That may sound like poetry, but for him, it was an earthquake. The idea that what we call truth is just the view from our particular window, limited, tinted, distorted. From another angle, what you thought was absolute dissolves into something unrecognizable. It's not that there's no reality, but that no human can ever see all of it at once. Then came Gödel, quiet, mathematical, devastating. He proved that even the most precise, logical systems contain holes they cannot patch. In any formal system, there will be truths that the system itself cannot prove. In other words, no matter how tightly you seal the borders of your knowledge, something will always leak through. What we call truth might just be coherence, an internal consistency that feels right. But feeling right isn't the same as being right. And if no foundation is final, maybe truth is more of a dance than a destination, a rhythm we follow to feel stable in an ever-moving world. A soft voice asks, "Then, how do you trust anything?" And the answer isn't certainty, it's trust itself. Maybe belief is the real engine behind our so-called truths. We believe in justice. We believe in love. We believe in science, or fate, or intuition. And those beliefs give shape to the world we live in more than any cold fact ever could. The myth, then, isn't just that there is a truth, but that we ever truly wanted one. Tonight, you don't need to choose between truths. You don't need to resolve anything. Let the contradictions rest beside each other like waves in the same sea, fluid, rising, receding. And as you drift towards sleep, we'll slip into the next mystery, a place where time seems to fold, and déjà vu may not be a glitch, but a glimpse. The loop called déjà vu. It happens like a soft whisper inside your bones. You pause mid-step, mid-breath, and the world folds inward for just a blink. A conversation you're certain you've never had feels eerily rehearsed. The street corner smells exactly like a thought you couldn't place yesterday. You're not reliving a memory, but something is replaying you. Didn't we already pass this tree? One voice asks in a low tone, not out of fear but a strange comfort. The other replies with a smile. Or maybe the tree passed us again. There's no thunderclap, no revelation, only the quiet shiver of knowing something you shouldn't. Déjà vu. It's the glitch in the seams of the world that never quite tears them open, but makes you wonder what's hiding between the stitches. Science sometimes calls it a memory echo, a misfire where short-term experience feels like long-term recall, but maybe it's more than that. Some theorists speak of consciousness looping through variations of the same life, that in a multiverse of branching timelines, your awareness may slip, accidentally syncing with another version of you who's lived this exact scene, perhaps hundreds of times. Others propose that déjà vu is the ghost of a decision not taken, a crossroads passed so many times that even time forgets which version is now. A quiet moment at a cafe. A man glances up from his book. "You look like someone I've met before," he says softly. The woman nods. "Funny, I was just about to say the same." But no names are exchanged. No stories revealed, just that breath of familiarity suspended in air. Maybe we're wrong to assume time is a line we walk forward. Maybe it's a spiral, a slow swirl of awareness revisiting its own shadows. If time loops, whether in physics or perception, then the question isn't what is real, but what is repeating. Is choice real if the moment has already played out somewhere else? Does destiny mean anything if the script shifts but the scenery stays the same? Or maybe déjà vu is less about remembering and more about recognition, like the soul quietly nodding to itself across dimensions. A friend once said during a midnight walk, "I don't think it matters if we've been here before. I just like that it feels like we have." And in that sentence, there's peace. So as the spiral turns, gently and slowly, let yourself rest in the possibility that not everything needs to be explained to be meaningful. Let it be enough that some moments arrive not to be understood, but to be remembered before they ever happened. Now, as your breath slows, we'll drift next into a myth more subtle, one where thought doesn't just reflect the world, it writes the script as it goes. Thought as the fabric of the world. Some nights, the world feels lighter, like it could vanish if you stopped paying attention. The chair under you, the room around you, the sky above. You reach for them, not with your hands, but with your awareness. And in that quiet reach, something trembles. What if the universe isn't made of atoms, but of thought? There is a strange tenderness in this question, like brushing the edge of a dream that won't stay still. According to the idealist tradition, from George Berkeley's Esse est percipi, to be is to be perceived, to the Yogacara school in Mahayana Buddhism, everything we call real may just be the echo of mind bouncing off itself. The solidity of a wall is only a memory you've agreed to carry. The persistence of the world might be no more than a habit of consciousness, repeating itself with such precision that it looks like structure. Do you ever feel like you're not walking through the world, she asked one night, but remembering it into being as you go? He looked up from the sidewalk, the lamplight warming the shape of his breath. Yeah, like it's not really there until I think about it. That's the unsettling grace of idealism. It flips the script. Instead of minds arising from a physical world, it suggests the world arises from mind. The trees, the coffee cup, the scent of rain. They are not outside of thought, but within it. Consciousness, not matter, is primary. And this view is not merely poetic. Quantum physics has flirted with similar whispers. Observers collapse wave functions. Measurement seems to participate in the very shaping of what is. If the act of observation defines what becomes real, then perhaps thought isn't in the world. Perhaps it is the world's blueprint. So what are we then? Islands of thought drifting in a sea of shared imagination? Or is there only one mind, dreaming itself through a billion filters, forgetting its wholeness so it can play at being separate? He tapped the table between them. But this is solid, right? She smiled gently. Only because you remember how it's supposed to feel. And in that silence between their words, a deeper truth began to hum. If the world is thought, then silence, the absence of thought, might be its most honest moment, like the blank space between dreams where something greater waits, not to be spoken, but to be felt. As you drift now, allow the question to dissolve into stillness. Let the edges blur. Let form melt into mind. Because next, we'll enter a space where to forget is the only way to begin. The amnesia of being born. You arrived here once, not today, not yesterday, but some soft moment ago, too early to name, too strange to file away. Yet you don't recall the arrival, not the moment your breath first startled your lungs, nor the sound of the world stepping in to greet you. It's as if life began mid-sentence, and no one thought to hand you the earlier pages. One person says to another at the edge of a waiting room, "Ever wonder why we don't remember being born?" The other shrugs, eyes scanning the room as if the answer might be on the ceiling. Maybe we weren't supposed to. Maybe we'd never recover from it. Some philosophies call this forgetting intentional. Tibetan traditions whisper that memory is folded inward at birth, so that each life begins blank, ready to be painted without distraction from what came before. In certain esoteric teachings, memory of a before life would be too overwhelming, too interfering, as if the soul signs a quiet contract, to forget in order to fully live. And perhaps you've felt this, not as belief, but as sensation. That gentle ache in moments of déjà vu. That eerie familiarity with strangers who seem like echoes. Or the strange comfort of a place you've never been. We dismiss it. But what if those flickers are memory's smudged fingerprints? Traces of who you were before language tied you down to this version of you. Two neighbors sit on a front porch as the sun disappears. It's strange, one says. Sometimes I dream of places I swear I've never seen, but I know where the stairs creak. Maybe you do know them, the other replies softly, just not as you. If forgetting is part of being born, then memory is not a perfect record. It's a gentle fiction, crafted to keep us sane, curious, and soft enough to grow. The things we don't remember may not be gone, just hidden behind a veil too delicate to lift without tearing the whole story apart. This gives mercy its own myth. Perhaps we are not meant to carry every truth. Perhaps it would weigh too much. The absence of memory is not always loss. It can be grace. It can be design. It can be an invitation to rediscover, not recall. Let yourself rest now. Let the quiet between memories hold you. Sometimes the space where something should be is where the deepest meaning hides. In the next breath, we'll slip into a quieter mystery, where words, not memories, are the mask, where language begins to deceive, even as it tries to reveal. The lie hidden in every word. They sat across from each other at the kitchen table, steam curling from twin cups of tea. Why do we always end up arguing over nothing? She asked quietly, eyes fixed on the swirling surface. He shrugged, hesitant. Maybe it's the words. Maybe they're too small for what we're trying to say. Language, our most trusted companion, has a silent betrayal hidden in its embrace. We speak to bridge the gap between our minds, yet more often, words become the gap. Wittgenstein once wrote, "Whereof one cannot speak, thereof one must be silent." A haunting admission from a philosopher of language himself. Words are not windows. They are doors that only open one way, outward, and often fail to let anyone in. Every word is a box, a containment. You say love, and 100 different memories are stirred. Not all yours. You say pain, but no tongue can hold the sharp edge of your personal sorrow. Language offers the illusion of shared understanding, yet we remain islands, shouting metaphors across an ocean, like trying to grasp fog with fingers made of logic. Derrida's deconstruction pulled this illusion further apart. Meaning, he argued, is always deferred. Every word relies on other words to make sense, and those other words rely on more. An infinite regression. Like chasing the horizon, we never quite arrive. We name something, and in naming it, we narrow it, slice its fullness into symbols, angles, limits. The Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. The first line of the Tao Te Ching is not just a poetic warning, it is a philosophical koan. It reminds us that the most profound truths slip past the net of syntax. Naming the Tao kills its breath. What can be truly lived cannot be truly said. And perhaps what truly connects us is not what we say, but what we feel behind the saying. "Do you think we really understand each other?" she asked, voice soft as a falling leaf. He looked up, uncertain. "Sometimes. Maybe not with words, but when we sit here, like this." The silence between them grew, gentle, undemanding, and more honest than any answer. So what are we building when we build with language, meaning, or illusion? Are our most cherished truths dressed in lies that fit neatly into sentences? Maybe to speak is to distort, to reduce a galaxy into a grain of sand and pretend it still glows. Tonight, Let go of the need to explain. Let the space between words hum with what can never be phrased. In that pause, there may be more truth than all the words we've ever spoken. And now, drift gently into the next myth, a strange mirror where you may find that others are only shadows of your own mind. The Solipsist's ghost world. There are nights when silence feels heavier than sound, when the quiet hum of the room almost responds, as if listening. You check your phone. Nothing. But something in the stillness lingers, like presence without proof. Maybe it's just the echo of your thoughts, or maybe it's all there ever was. A man once said, "I think, therefore I am." But he didn't say you are. He didn't prove we are. In solipsism, the only certainty is that you exist. Everything else, voices, friends, clouds in the sky, could be illusions stitched into a dream you've forgotten how to wake up from. You call someone, and they answer. But how do you know they weren't just coded to respond? Two friends sit on a park bench, sipping coffee. One says, "Do you ever get the feeling that when you leave a room, it stops existing?" The other laughs, "Only when I forget to turn off the lights." They laugh together. But who is they, really? If only your own mind is real, then every smile you remember, every tear you witnessed, might have bloomed from within you like a solitary flower in an empty desert. There's a tenderness, though, in that loneliness, because if no one else exists, then you gave them meaning. You invented kindness. You created grief. You shaped the faces you loved out of your own longing not to be alone. Someone once held the door open and said, "You look like you're in a hurry. Go ahead." Was that them? Or just a part of you that needed a sign the world cared? You'll never know for certain. But the gesture mattered. Even if you made it up, you made it real enough to remember. In a world where no one else might exist, what does love mean? What is heartbreak? Could it be that you are your own soulmate, your own audience, your own witness? You've been clapping for yourself in the dark all along, hoping the sound reaches somewhere deeper than silence. And yet, this isn't meant to isolate you. It's not meant to scare you. It's a whisper in the dark that maybe, just maybe, the universe is more intimate than you thought. Not empty, but focused. Not absent, but waiting for you. So tonight, when memories flicker behind your eyelids, notice how warm they feel, how familiar, as if you've built a world just gentle enough to cradle you when no one else can. And if in the hush of midnight you hear your name spoken softly like a secret, it may be your own voice, reminding you that you've never really been alone. The faces you remember tonight may be memories you created to keep yourself company. Now rest, as we drift to a myth that wonders, if nothing can be proven to exist, then did anything ever really happen? The event that never happens. There is a stillness that hides beneath every motion, a silence behind every conversation. And sometimes, late at night, when the world feels paused, as if holding its breath, you might wonder, did anything ever really happen at all? Two voices drift quietly in the dark. Did you hear that? Hear what? The sound of the day ending. It felt like something ended. Or maybe it didn't. Maybe nothing ever starts or ends. We just pass through it. In quantum theory, particularly in the interpretation known as the block universe, time is not a flowing river. It is a frozen lake. Every moment, every second, every breath you've taken is still there, laid out like stars on a fixed map. You're not riding time like a wave. You are already everywhere you will ever be. Everything is written. everything is happening and has already happened. That feeling of change, the sense that your life is unfolding, moment to moment, chapter by chapter, it's a construction. Perception is the projector. You're not walking down a hallway. You're staring at a mural painted all at once, while your mind insists it's being drawn in real time. A soft sigh in the dark. But what about everything I've been through? The struggles, the progress. What if growth is the illusion? What if the flower never opens? We just believe it does. This doesn't mean your emotions aren't real. Regret still stings. Hope still lifts. But if time is a sculpture, not a journey, then these feelings are not steps forward or backward. They're facets of a singular gem already set in its place. You are not becoming. You are simply being over and over, viewed from slightly different angles by the lens of consciousness. So perhaps you haven't made mistakes. Perhaps you haven't missed opportunities. Those are just interpretations of a moment that never moves, like shadows cast on a statue. The heartbreak, the joy, the longing, they're all still there, like lights flickering across the same still frame. And if nothing truly happens, then you are not late. You are not early. You are not lost. You are not found. You are here, and here is always. Then, what's the point of doing anything? Maybe the point isn't to change the painting. Maybe it's just to notice it, with kindness. Let your breath settle. Let the noise of next fade. Close your eyes, and rest in the event that never was. We now drift to a stranger place, where perhaps your own eyes aren't the only ones doing the seeing. The mirror with eyes. There's a quiet hum in the air tonight, not from a machine, not from outside, but from everything. A pulse behind the silence, like the world holding its breath, not because it's waiting, but because it's listening. A woman walks past a vending machine in a hospital hallway, her eyes glazed with exhaustion. She presses a button for coffee, but the cup gets stuck. She exhales, too tired to be angry. Then a voice nearby says gently, "Sometimes the machines act like they know exactly when we need them most." She turns and smiles, not because it makes sense, but because it feels true. We often move through life thinking we're the only ones observing. That consciousness is ours alone, neatly sealed inside our skulls. But what if that's not the whole story? Some philosophers and physicists whisper of panpsychism, a notion ancient as the stars and as strange as quantum logic. It suggests that awareness isn't a product of brains, but a feature of matter itself. Consciousness, not as a glitch in evolution, but as the default setting of the cosmos. Tiny, diffuse, quiet, but present, even in stone, even in starlight, even in the dust between your fingers. And so, the desk you lean on, it's not just holding weight. It's with you, not watching like a person might, but present in a way we don't have words for. Maybe that's why some places feel warm and others feel off, even when no one is there. Maybe the room remembers you, or maybe it never forgot. A child once asked, "Do trees get sad when we cut them down?" The father replied without looking up, "Only if you believe they were listening." The child said nothing, but hugged the trunk of the nearest tree a little longer than usual. If this idea holds even a flicker of truth, then the world is not your stage. It's your quiet companion. The breeze that lifts your hair is not random. It's response. The moonlight through your window doesn't just touch your face, it sees it. And in that way, you are never alone. Not in the room, not in the field, not even in your most isolated thoughts. So tonight, as you settle in and the rhythm of your breath grows slow, let yourself be looked at by the blanket wrapped around you, by the walls that held your laughter once, by the night sky pressing gently at your window pane, not with judgment, not with questions, just presence. You are not surrounded by things. You are surrounded by witnesses. And now, with that soft awareness still resting beside you, we move gently into a myth where life perhaps never needed meaning at all. The myth of meaning. There is a moment, quiet, breathless, when the questions stop asking themselves, not because you've found the answer, but because the silence grows louder than the need to explain. In that silence, meaning slips through your fingers like sand, warm but impossible to hold. You ever feel like none of this was built for anything? What do you mean? I mean, we keep trying to make sense of it all, like there's a secret message hidden in the stars, or in what our parents told us, or why we're drawn to certain people. But maybe there's no message, just the stars. Would that scare you? A little, but also not really. Maybe it's a kind of freedom. Existentialist thinkers like Albert Camus and Jean-Paul Sartre didn't try to soothe that fear. Instead, they looked it straight in the eyes. To Camus, life was absurd, a clash between the human craving for meaning and the universe's silent indifference. You shout your deepest questions into the void, and the void offers no reply. Yet this isn't cruelty, it's clarity. Sartre took it further. Since there is no blueprint, no divine instruction manual, we are condemned to be free. With no predefined purpose, the responsibility to invent one falls entirely on us. It's both liberating and terrifying. You are not born with a meaning. You must carve it out with trembling hands from the chaos. But in that absurdity, something strange and beautiful occurs. When nothing is required to mean anything, everything becomes available to mean something. The laughter of a friend, the smell of rain on pavement, the slow quiet of early morning, all can hold sacred weight, not because they must, but because you choose to see them that way. Perhaps the myth was never that meaning exists, but that it must. Maybe the weight of purpose has been a heavy coat we've been trying to wear in the summer heat, unnecessary, inherited, and suffocating. When you take it off, when you allow life to be simply what it is, momentary, uncertain, and soft around the edges, you begin to feel its texture for the first time. Meaning, in this light, becomes a paintbrush rather than a rule book. A sunset doesn't have to explain itself. A moment doesn't need a lesson. You don't need to be going somewhere to be worth something. You can just be. So tonight, let that idea rest beside you. The myth of meaning isn't meant to haunt you. It's an open sky. It's the permission to breathe without explanation. Let go of the need to name what you're feeling. Let life arrive on its own terms. And as the idea fades, another stirs quietly in its place. What if the memories you cling to, the ones you trust to define you, were never true at all? The false memory machine. Somewhere in the quiet rhythm of your breath, a memory flickers. You're sure it happened. A face in a hallway, a voice calling your name, the smell of something warm and sweet in a kitchen long gone. But tonight, under this soft light of thought, we ask something gentle yet unsettling. What if the memory lies? A conversation once floated between two strangers at a dim train station bench. One said, "I swear I remember the sky being red that night." The other paused, stirred their coffee, and replied, "Funny, I remember rain." There was no argument, just two realities softly resting beside each other, both certain, both wrong. Neuroscience has taught us that memory isn't a vault, it's a theater. Every time you revisit a memory, you're not opening a sealed file. You're rewriting the scene with new lighting, changed costumes, different lines. What you remember now may not be what you remembered 5 years ago, or even yesterday. That's not a glitch. It's how the mind survives. In the hands of suggestion, memory becomes clay. A childhood story repeated enough times becomes a lived event. A photograph triggers details that were never there. A dream, replayed often enough, becomes part of your waking past. Traumas can shatter memory into shards that rearrange themselves in safer patterns. Time itself erodes the edges until only the mood remains. Bittersweet, blurred, and oddly comforting. So if memory is a mosaic rebuilt with every recall, what does that say about who we are? Who is the you think you've always been? Are you the sum of true things, or just the stories that have stuck, the ones retold enough times that no one questions them anymore? A woman once whispered as she brushed her hand against a faded note tucked inside a novel. "I don't remember writing this, but it's my handwriting." She didn't sound afraid, just curious, as if maybe she had once been someone else, and that someone had left her a message. And isn't that all we are? A series of notes passed from one version of ourselves to the next, each one rewritten slightly in the retelling. So tonight, let go of the need to confirm what was. You don't need to trace every line of your past to rest. Let the soft erosion of time carry the weight for you. Forgetting, too, is a form of healing. Let your thoughts settle like pages closing softly on a chapter you no longer need to read again. And in the hush that follows, we'll step gently into a myth where logic itself begins to dissolve, like ink spreading in water. The lie in logic. It begins quietly, like a child learning to count. 1, 2, 3. Order, pattern, meaning. We build our worlds on logic because it feels safe, like a staircase that will never break beneath our feet. We use it to make sense of what we see, to decide what is right, to chase what is real. But what happens when the staircase loops back into itself? When the system, no matter how elegant, contains a crack, one it cannot see from within? But logic is supposed to be perfect, he said once, over tea, tapping the table softly like it held the truth. So was the sky, until we found out it bends, she replied. Kurt Gödel, a quiet genius with trembling hands and piercing doubts, showed the world a puzzle it couldn't unsee. His incompleteness theorems weren't just mathematical, they were spiritual earthquakes. They said, quite simply, any system of logic that is powerful enough to do arithmetic will always contain statements that are true, but cannot be proven. You can build the machine, you can polish every gear, but there will always be a whisper in the engine that you cannot trace. This wasn't a flaw in the design, it was the nature of design itself, and so the foundation of certainty cracked. The Enlightenment dream of a neat, clean cosmos, a rational machine humming in divine clarity, was gone. In its place, a mirror, fogged and flickering, a mind that could no longer promise itself absolute clarity, a world where even the purest reason hides mysteries it cannot decode. So you're telling me even logic lies? Not lies, but sometimes it looks away. Sometimes it says, I know the answer, but I can't show it to you. And we, poor creatures of craving, we want so badly for things to make sense. We ache for closure. We want to know that 2 + 2 will always be 4, not just in arithmetic, but in love, in justice, in memory. But logic does not love us back. It doesn't owe us symmetry. It doesn't need to soothe our fears. And maybe that's where peace lives, in surrender, in knowing that not all maps reach the edge, that not every equation will balance, that even truth has silences. So rest now. Let your mind loosen its grip on certainty. Let the unresolved questions settle like dust in twilight. You don't need to solve everything to sleep. Close your eyes. Breathe. Because even logic takes a pause. And in the stillness of that pause, we drift gently toward the next myth, one where your own reflection may not be reflecting you at all. The reflection that thinks. A mirror is supposed to be simple, passive, just light bouncing back. But there's a strange intimacy to the moment you meet your own gaze. It lingers a half-second longer than it should, like a handshake that doesn't release. The room is quiet, but something hums behind the glass, like the thought that your reflection isn't mimicking you, but responding. Do you ever feel, one of them asks while brushing their teeth, that the face you see in the mirror knows something you don't? The other chuckles softly, rinsing their mouth. Sometimes I think it's tired of pretending to be me. In myths, mirrors have always held uneasy magic. A gateway, a trap, a twin. Yet even outside of folklore, neuroscience whispers questions. Babies learn to recognize themselves through the mirror. Somewhere around 18 months, the mind begins constructing me. But what exactly is it recognizing? A pattern of features? Or a fragile idea that this pattern means I? Look again. That face staring back might not be just reversed. It might be selectively edited. Subtle mood changes show up before you consciously feel them. Your reflection tightens, softens, ages, before you admit it to yourself. It knows. And if it knows, can it want? Can it rebel, even silently? Could it be that the version of you see every morning is not an echo but a fragment, carrying emotions you refuse to name, memories you've disowned, truths too raw to face head-on? I don't think I've changed, he says quietly, sitting in the passenger seat, watching his profile in the window. She glances at him, then back to the road. Then maybe it's your reflection that's trying to tell you otherwise. Mirrors don't lie, we say, but they filter. They crop out what's behind us. They freeze us in time. They feed us back our own gaze, stripped of warmth, of pulse, of breath. Is that really you? Or just the version of you that can be seen but not felt? The unsettling thought is not that the mirror is haunted by something else. It's that it may be haunted by you, by parts of you that never got to speak. The reflections we leave behind aren't just physical, they're psychic echoes. And sometimes, when we look too long, they look back. You blink. And in that fraction of a second, who was really first to move? You smile half-heartedly and wonder, did it smile first? Tonight, if sleep finds you in the quiet curve of your own mind, let your reflection rest too. You don't need to hold up the image anymore. Even in the dark, the mirror remembers you. It always has. And maybe it always will. Now, we drift gently toward a different kind of language, where numbers don't calculate. They confess. Let's step into the myth where reason bends under the weight of mystery. The math that knows too much. A soft hum settles into the silence of your thoughts, like the low thrum of an equation waiting to be solved. We often think of numbers as lifeless tools, cold, exact, unfeeling. But what if they're not just symbols we created, but secrets we've stumbled upon? Do you think math was invented or discovered? Like, were the laws of physics just sitting there, waiting for us to write them down? Or did we write them into being by needing them to exist? Pythagoras didn't see numbers as tools. He saw them as sacred. To him, the number 3 wasn't just 1 plus 1 plus 1. It was a force, a harmony, a god's whisper tucked into a triangle. And thousands of years later, our most advanced theories still lean on symbols and structures so elegant, they almost feel like poetry. Look at how mathematical formulas, like those of Dirac or Schrödinger, have predicted things long before they were seen. The positron was first an outcome on paper. The Higgs boson was math's quiet prophecy. Somehow the universe obeys rules we scribbled into notebooks before ever seeing the evidence. That should unsettle us. And yet we rarely pause to ask, why does math work at all? Why should abstract patterns dreamed up in the human mind map so precisely onto stars, atoms, gravity, and time? Maybe it's because the universe is math. Maybe it's not made of atoms or fields, but of ratios and shapes and symmetrical laws. Perhaps we're walking through a cathedral of geometry, and every breath you take is a number recited by the cosmos. Or maybe math is just a skin, a veil, something our minds use to approximate the truly strange machinery of reality underneath. Maybe we're not unlocking universal truths, but simplifying unknowable chaos into neat little patterns, like children tracing shapes into fogged windows and thinking they've mapped the storm outside. Do you think numbers are real? They feel real, but maybe that's just because we've used them so long we can't dream without them. Or maybe we're dreaming because of them. Tonight, let the equations fade. Let the rigid lines of logic soften and blur until even pi becomes just another lullaby. Next, we'll drift into a myth that asks, are your memories truly yours? Or did they arrive, fully formed from a story written without your name? Borrowed memories. Some nights, you can't quite tell if a memory is yours, or just something you saw in a film once. A smell brings back a childhood that feels real, but distant, blurred, like an old postcard with someone else's name on it. You blink. The feeling fades, but something lingers, like dust that refuses to settle. Did I dream that? Someone asks across the room, folding laundry with the calm of routine. No, I think that happened. You told me about it last year. They pause. Strange. I remember it differently now. We treat memory like a bank, safe, personal, secure. But science keeps pulling up receipts we never meant to file. Cryptomnesia. It sounds clinical, but the idea is simple. Your brain stores something away, forgets the source, and one day hands it back to you as if you made it. A melody hums in your mind. You think it's yours, but it isn't. It never was. Yet deeper currents run beneath. Some psychologists speak of inherited memory, not in metaphor, but in the tremble of real patterns passed through generations. Grandmother's grief nested quietly in your nervous system. A stranger's joy riding shotgun in a dream. Jung's collective unconscious, a shared space where thoughts might echo, like footsteps in a corridor without walls. You were never taught to fear water, yet your pulse quickens near the ocean. You never lived through war, yet loud noises tighten your chest. How many stories do we carry without reading the book? How many names live inside us, unsigned? A woman sits beside a fountain at dusk, watching pigeons scatter. She turns to the man beside her and says, "I always loved this place." He tilts his head. "You've never been here before." And she smiles softly. "Then maybe I loved it as someone else." If memory isn't private, then identity isn't fixed. You may be a chorus, not a solo. A harmony of borrowed verses sung in your voice. The idea of self begins to ripple. What if you're not just the author, but also the librarian, the reader, even the paper. No need to hold too tightly to the timeline tonight. Let your mind release the people, the places, even the certainty. Maybe some memories found you because they needed to rest somewhere warm, and maybe you were kind enough to let them stay. So if a face appears in your dreams and you don't recognize it, that's okay. It might not belong to you, or perhaps you once belonged to it. Let your breath drift like old photographs carried by wind. No need to organize them now. Next, we slip into a myth where cause may not come before effect, and the future might be watching you back. The effect before the cause. There's something quietly unsettling about walking into a room and sensing that you've already had this conversation before. Not déjà vu, but something subtler, as if your words were rehearsed long ago by a version of you that hadn't even existed yet. We grow up believing time is like a river. It flows forward, from source to sea. But deep in the hidden math of the universe, there's a whisper. What if the river sometimes flows uphill? In quantum physics, the delayed choice experiments have challenged even our most basic assumptions. A photon, split and sent along two paths, behaves differently depending on whether or not it's observed after it's traveled. Somehow, it seems to know whether its future will include a measurement. It adjusts its past behavior accordingly, as if the effect reaches backward through time and reshapes the cause. Retrocausality, not a metaphor, not science fiction, but something woven into the machinery of reality itself. At a dimly lit cafe, two friends speak softly while the city hums around them. You ever feel like you're not making choices, but remembering them? Yeah, like the decision was already there. I just happened to catch up with it. Exactly. Like the future already happened, and now we're tracing its footsteps backward. So what if free will isn't about choosing, but accepting? These aren't just late-night musings. They're echoes of what some physicists and philosophers are beginning to take seriously. If the future can influence the past, then the idea of a linear, unfolding present collapses. Maybe time isn't a line at all, but a field where every point touches every other, not in sequence but in connection, like strings resonating across a grand cosmic instrument. And where does that leave us? It's tempting to feel trapped, as if destiny has already inked every page of your story. But what if the story is richer than that? What if freedom isn't about steering the river, but recognizing its currents and choosing how to drift? Close your eyes and feel the tension unwind. Inhale slowly, as though you are drawing breath from tomorrow. Exhale gently, as if releasing the memory of a past that's still forming. The mind, like the quantum world, doesn't need a clear direction. It needs only to be present. Here, where effect and cause ripple through one another like reflections on a pond. And now, as your thoughts settle into silence, let go of the arrow of time. Let your dreams drift not just forward, but backward, into the moments that might not have happened yet, but are already shaping the person you're becoming. Up next, a myth that asks, what if the world you wake into is the one your dream just built? Waking into the dream. You wake up, light spills across the bedsheets like a quiet witness. The air is still. Your phone buzzes with reminders, and the world resumes its shape. But something doesn't click the way it used to. That old, silent question returns, almost shy, almost playful. How do you know you're awake? A voice at the cafe says, "You ever feel like this isn't real?" Another replies, "Only when I'm tired," or staring at the microwave waiting for it to beep. They laugh, but the question stays, floating above their coffee cups like rising steam. For centuries, minds both west and east have circled this same spiral. Descartes wondered whether an evil demon might be deceiving him. In Indian philosophy, the waking world is called Maya, a divine illusion, persistent, shimmering, but ultimately unfixed. And the Yogacara Buddhists ask whether the dream and the waking are just two sides of the same veil. You fall asleep in one dream, wake up in another. In some lucid dreams, a person lives an entire lifetime in minutes, loves, ages, mourns, begins again, only to open their eyes in bed, breathless and confused. Who's to say this moment isn't another layer of that? Someone once whispered in the middle of a sleepless night, maybe the reason we don't remember falling asleep is the same reason we don't remember waking from this. And you didn't answer. You just stared at the ceiling and felt oddly transparent. Perhaps what we call waking up is merely the body's agreement to continue with the story it knows best, the one where your name has edges, where your job exists, where gravity behaves. But the corners sometimes fold inward. When a stranger calls you by a different name, when you forget where you were going, when the mirror seems to hesitate just a moment too long. Maybe enlightenment isn't about gaining knowledge, but remembering the truth you already suspected, that this life, too, is a performance inside a dream. Lucidity doesn't mean escape. It means awareness. It means walking through a world of smoke and color and meaning, knowing the floor may vanish at any step, and still choosing to dance. A child once asked his grandmother, "How do you know you're not dreaming right now?" She smiled and said, "Because if I were, I'd be younger and you wouldn't be this clever." But later, she paused, folded a towel, and whispered, "Or maybe you're the part of the dream I don't want to wake from." So, if your eyes feel heavy now, let them close. Let the room fade at the edges. There's no need to resist the blur. You've spent all day rehearsing the waking world. Now let yourself drift softly into the space beneath it. Don't try to wake up. Let the hum of existence lull you. Let thought unravel into threads of softness. Because maybe, just maybe, the moment you stop questioning whether this is a dream is the moment you begin to truly see it. And as your breath settles and your body becomes light, we'll slip into the next reflection. A myth that wonders if identity itself is nothing more than a well-rehearsed role. Played so long, we've forgotten its theater. The self as a role. You forgot you're playing. There's a hush in the theater of your mind tonight. The curtains are drawn and the spotlight dims, not onto a grand entrance, but onto the quiet thought that maybe you are not who you think you are, not a fixed character, not a solid soul carved into stone, but something more delicate, more shifting, a role, a voice in a script left behind. Think of the way you greet a stranger, the way your tone changes when you're with family, the way you laugh at work, softer, slightly rehearsed. Is that you? Or is it a version of you, tailored, trimmed, adjusted to fit the context, like slipping into a different costume under stage lights that no one sees? A gentle conversation in a quiet kitchen. Do you ever feel like you're just pretending to be yourself? Sometimes, like I've done this so long, I forgot who I was before the pretending started. Irving Goffman, the sociologist, once said, "Life is a series of performances, that we don't have identities. We enact them. We're not just sons or thinkers or artists. We're people playing those parts, believing the stage is real. And yet, unlike theater, the script is invisible. We improvise each day, not knowing if we're being true or just habitual. But what if there's no real underneath the masks? What if the actor disappears when the play stops? What if we're just the echo of lines spoken long ago, rehearsed so often we believe them? Not deception, but familiarity. Like a melody you've sung so many times it starts to sound like your voice. Philosophers have wrestled with this unease. If the self is merely behavior, if it bends and shifts with circumstance, then is there any core at all? And if not, who is watching this all unfold? Who sits in the audience of your thoughts? Or is the audience another mask, one that pretends to observe while still inside the performance? As you drift into rest, feel the seams of identity loosen. You're not required to carry the weight of a name or a past or a persona. You don't need to perform in this moment. The roles can rest, the stage can sleep. Let the velvet curtain fall, soft and unhurried. Let silence take its turn. The mask of you may return in the morning. But tonight, let there be no actor, no role. Just stillness. Just breathe. And in the next act, we enter a myth where the future may already exist, and it might be waiting for you to remember it. The future that already happened. You step into tomorrow like a child entering a dark room, nervous, curious, unsure. But what if that room isn't empty at all? What if everything you're about to discover has been waiting patiently, like a friend already seated at the cafe, sipping tea, long before you arrived? There's a quiet theory tucked deep inside the physics of space-time. It's called the block universe, and it suggests something deeply strange, that time, rather than a river we travel through, is more like a landscape. All at once, already there, past, present, and future, laid out like towns on a map. You don't move forward. You simply open to the page you hadn't read yet. In this view, the future isn't something you create. It's something you uncover. A fixed frame of film you haven't seen before, though the reel has long been wound, and that means every decision you think you're making might already be written into the script. One evening, a man waiting at a bus stop said to the person beside him, "Funny how we say we don't know the future, but somehow we expect the bus to come." The other smiled, stretching tired legs. "Yeah, we build whole lives around things we believe will happen. Maybe that's what hope is. Not a guess, just recognition. Recognition of what? Perhaps not of what will be, but of what somewhere already is." This changes the tone of longing. Instead of reaching forward to grasp a maybe, you are reaching inward to touch what already belongs to you. A memory from the future, folded neatly in the lining of your thoughts. And yet, there is comfort here. If the future is already alive, then perhaps your worries are like reading the last page too soon. You'll get there, regardless. The scene will unfold whether or not you hold your breath. So what does it mean to hope if the ending has already happened? Maybe hope isn't naive. It's sacred. Maybe it's the mind's quiet rebellion against forgetting that what we need is not missing, just hidden. You might lie in bed now, uncertain about tomorrow, but tomorrow might already be tucking you in. As you drift, feel each second not as a step toward the unknown, but as a page gently lifted. The next is already written. The chapter doesn't rush you. The ink doesn't fade if you close your eyes. And if you feel like you've forgotten something you never knew, perhaps you're remembering in reverse. No need to run forward. The future waits like a familiar scent just behind the door. Let's now wander into a myth where you are not the one doing the dreaming, but the one being dreamed. You are the dream of something else. Have you ever felt like reality is too delicate? Like a single breath could dissolve it all? A familiar room, a conversation, the sound of your own heartbeat, all of it holding together with the same fragile logic as a dream you can't quite explain. Not because you're in a dream, but because you are one. Somewhere, perhaps nowhere, something vast and unknowable is sleeping. And in its sleep, it dreams. That dream takes the form of light, matter, memory, your voice, your name. In certain mystical traditions, Advaita Vedanta, for instance, the self is said to be not the dreamer, but the dream itself. Not the one creating the story, but the story unfolding. A flicker in someone else's imagination. Hey, do you ever wonder if you're actually here? Like, physically? Like if maybe you're just a thought in something bigger? Like a daydream the universe is having? Yeah. Or maybe we're the echo of a mind so old it forgot it was thinking. In this perspective, your joys are not possessions. Your sorrows aren't punishments. They're waves on an ocean that doesn't know it's waving. Just movement in a stillness too deep to notice itself. It's not metaphor. It's a claim about what you are. Not a body in a world, but the image of a world painted on consciousness. And if that's the case, if you are a dream, then what is fear but a shadow moving across a cloud? What is death but the shift from one story thread to another within the same sleeping mind? There's no need to control, no need to chase, because the dreamer is already carrying you, moment by moment, breath by breath. Sometimes the dream feels tight, uncomfortable, like something is pressing in. Anxiety, heartbreak, doubt. But these too are part of the dreaming. The wind in the branches, the storm before the calm, and sometimes there's beauty so quiet it aches. A warm drink, a shared silence, the scent of someone you love. These are the soft spots in the dream where the sleeper almost stirs. But what happens if the dreamer does wake? Do we vanish, or do we become the dreamer, remembering that we were never separate to begin with? The Upanishads whisper that the dream and the dreamer are one, divided only by illusion. You were never outside of it, never apart. So tonight, don't try to wake up. Don't seek to escape the illusion or define what is real. Instead, let the boundaries loosen. Let the colors bleed at the edges. Let the dream become clearer, not sharper, just more aware of itself. In the quiet that follows, we'll step into a deeper myth, one where space itself may not exist until something sees it. Space exists only when observed. You close your eyes, and yet the room doesn't vanish. Or does it? There's a strange softness in the air tonight, the kind that blurs the edges of certainty. The pillow under your head is real enough. The blanket, warm, grounding. But what about the wall behind you, or the ceiling above? Is it there, or merely expected to be? In the quiet rhythm of falling asleep, there's a myth the mind often forgets. That space, the vast and silent backdrop to all your moments, may not be something that simply is. In the language of quantum physics, those whispering equations that peek beneath the world's skin, some interpretations suggest that particles don't occupy a fixed place until someone or something pays attention. In this view, the fabric of reality isn't solid, it's participatory. Where things are depends on whether they are seen. Two strangers sat in the corner of a quiet subway car, the kind that hums softly between late-night stops. One of them, sipping tea from a paper cup, tilted his head and asked, "If no one opens the door to the storage room in 20 years, has it been empty all along? Or has it not existed at all?" The other, gently smiling, replied, "Maybe it only becomes a room again when someone needs to hide inside it." That's how space begins to feel when you stop insisting it's always there. The hallway beyond your bedroom, the city skyline beneath the moon, even the space between your outstretched hands. They may not be permanent fixtures, but stories summoned into form by your glance, your thought, your presence. If space is not constant, then solitude is not absence, it is potential. The untouched room is not lonely, it is waiting. The shadowed corner is not cold, it is undefined. You are not in a room that contains you. You are the moment the room takes shape. A child once asked his older sister, "Where does the world go when I sleep?" She answered, after a long pause, "Maybe it folds itself away until you want it back." And perhaps this folding, this dance of appearing and disappearing, is not a trick of the senses, but the very heartbeat of reality. Without an observer, space may have no edge, no center, no frame. Without your attention, the universe rests in a hush. Tonight, there is no need to check. Let the ceiling vanish for a while. Let the corners dissolve. Let your breath be the only certainty. You are not lost in space. You are creating it. Every breath, every flicker of awareness draws walls around you like ink curling into water. And when you drift far enough, when your mind begins to fall inward like a soft stone dropped into stillness, don't search for where you are, because perhaps there is no where without your wondering gaze. Just rest. Let awareness loosen. Let the outline of your room gently fade into possibility. Up next, a myth where silence is not the absence of sound, but the truest sound of all. The sound beneath silence. There is a moment just before sleep when the world seems to hush, not because everything has stopped, but because you've started to listen. It's in that space, quiet and full, where silence reveals its true shape, not as absence, not as void, but as presence, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself. In the teachings of many spiritual traditions, silence is not the lack of sound, but the ground of being. A monk sitting beneath a Bodhi tree, a child pressing their ear to a seashell, a mourner kneeling in a room where grief has already spoken. All are surrounded by what seems empty, but isn't. The mystics would say silence is where God hides. The physicists might say it's the resting state of vibration, the stillness that carries the possibility for every note, every explosion, every word. "Did you hear that?" someone asks. "No," replies the other. "I felt something." Exactly. Silence is what cradles the heartbeat before you notice it, what holds the breath as it pauses between sentences, what lives beneath your thoughts as they rise and fall like waves that never leave the ocean. John Cage understood this when he sat before a piano for 4 minutes and 33 seconds and played nothing. Or so it seemed. In that nothing, the rustle of paper, the shuffle of shoes, the cough in the back row, the sound of life happening became the music. Silence wasn't absence, it was invitation. And what if your mind works the same way? When thoughts stop tumbling and your inner monologue fades into stillness, there remains a pulse, not audible, not spoken, but real. Beneath all narration is a listener, and beneath that listener, something else. A space not asking for answers but simply being. Words are tools, beautiful but brittle. Silence holds what words never could. "You're quiet tonight," one voice says in the dark. "I'm listening," replies the other, "but not to anything. Just with everything." Because silence, in the end, isn't blankness. It's the field that holds every possibility, the unstruck note in a cosmic song, the self that watches without commenting. The truth that doesn't arrive like thunder but lingers like mist, unnoticed until everything else has passed. So let this quiet stay. Let it breathe with you, not as something to fill, but as something that is. No answers will shout their way through, but perhaps, in the space between questions, something softer will whisper back. In the next segment, we descend even further, into a myth where memory itself might be the dreamer, and the universe the dream, slowly forgetting its own story. The universe that forgets itself. Sometimes, late at night, when the noise of the day has finally fallen away, it feels like the whole world is exhaling, not in pain, not in relief, just letting go. And in that moment, when memory doesn't reach too far behind and thought doesn't stretch too far ahead, there's a sense that something ancient is dissolving, quietly. Have you ever walked into a room and forgotten why you came? That pause, that slight flicker of confusion, it might be trivial, but what if it mirrors the very nature of the universe? There's a strange theory, whispered among certain physicists and philosophers, that entropy isn't just disorder, it's forgetting. That the universe doesn't grow old by breaking, but by releasing its memory. It lets go of patterns. It erases the past, not violently, but like fog swallowing a trail you thought you could follow back. At a sidewalk cafe, someone leans over to a friend, stirring their tea, and says, "It's odd. I used to remember things so clearly. But lately, even the good memories feel like they were borrowed from someone else." Their friend nods, not with concern, but recognition. "Maybe forgetting is the only way we make room to live forward," they reply. On a cosmic scale, that same forgetting could be unfolding everywhere. The stars stretch away, not because they're fleeing anything, but because distance is a kind of fading. Space grows, yes, but not with intent, just like paper soaking up ink until the shapes disappear into blot. Think of an old photograph left too long in sunlight. The corners curl, the colors bleed, but the faces still smile, just a little, like they don't realize they're vanishing. What if the universe is doing the same thing, not ending in fire or collapse, but in soft unmaking? It brings up an unsettling beauty, because if time doesn't lead anywhere, if it's not a road but a dissolving trail, then there's no need to chase meaning at the end. It was always in the footprints themselves, even if they're gone now. One night, someone confesses, "I don't think I'm afraid of dying. I think I'm afraid of being forgotten." And the response comes gently, "But you forget things too, and it doesn't mean they weren't beautiful. Maybe your thoughts, your kindnesses, your moments of stillness, they ripple for a while, then fade. That doesn't make them less real. It makes them real in the only way things ever are, in passing. You don't need to be remembered to have mattered. So rest now. Let yourself become part of the gentle unraveling. No need to grip the edges, just lie back. The stars are forgetting their positions, the atoms are forgetting their past. And you are safe to forget your shape tonight. In the next myth, we'll explore something stranger still. A world that ends, not with a bang, but every time you blink. The world ends when you look away. There's a certain comfort in assuming the world continues without us, that the trees still sway, the streets still hum, and the sky still glows even when we turn our backs. But tonight, let that certainty loosen its grip. Let a quieter possibility drift in, like fog rolling into a quiet town. What if the world ends when you look away? In quantum physics, there's a mystery that refuses to settle: the wave function collapse. It whispers of a world that doesn't fully exist until something observes it. A particle isn't truly there until it's seen. It's not hiding. It's undefined, a haze of potential. Which means the moment you look away, the thing might not be there at all. Not in the way you expect. It could be different. It could be nothing. Or worse. It could be waiting for your return to begin existing again. Do you ever wonder? She asks as they sit on the porch, sharing tea under the blue hush of early night. If the hallway behind us actually disappears when we're out here? He smiles, tracing the rim of his mug. Sometimes, like it's folded up, like a set behind a stage, until we need it again. Exactly, she says, half laughing but not joking. What if our memory just stitches it back in when we open the door? Maybe that's what perception is. A backstage crew scrambling to build the next scene as you walk forward. A tree blossoms in your path, not because it's always been there, but because you need it to be. The world might be a film, and you its only certain audience. No extras, no lingering cast, just shadows responding to the light of your attention. And yet, this isn't about power, it's about fragility. If everything must be observed to exist, then existence is thin, trembling, delicate. The world isn't a solid stage, it's a breath held in suspense, waiting for eyes to arrive. So what happens when you sleep? When you blink? When you close your eyes and turn your face to the dark? Maybe the world holds its breath with you. Maybe it quietly folds itself away, respectfully, gently, until you wake again and need it. Or maybe, just maybe, you aren't the one watching. Maybe you're the thing being rendered when something else decides to look. Then who's doing the watching when I'm asleep? He asks, eyes half closed now. She doesn't answer at first, just sips her tea. Then softly says, maybe that's why we dream. So the world doesn't have to vanish entirely. Tonight, as your eyes grow heavier, you don't need to decide. Let the world behind you dissolve gently. Let each room you're not in fall away like a whisper forgotten. And if it all ends when you stop looking, let it end quietly, like a curtain drawn with love. Close your eyes, let the stage dim, and trust that if the world must pause, it will wait for you, respectfully, patiently, until you return. And now, we drift forward into a myth even stranger, where every stranger you pass might be some forgotten version of you. Every other person is you. Somewhere in the quiet part of the day, maybe waiting in line, maybe watching someone brush hair from their eyes, there's a strange flicker in the mind, a moment when someone else's life feels too familiar, as if you've worn it before, as if in some buried way you're seeing yourself. A man steps into the elevator and nods politely. You smile back, not because it's polite, but because something soft stirs behind his eyes. Recognition, without memory. There's no story between you, no shared past. And yet, it feels like a reunion with someone who once borrowed your heartbeat. There's a whisper in metaphysical thought, voiced by mystics, echoed in modern consciousness theories, that maybe, beneath the illusion of separation, there's only one of us here. The one consciousness hypothesis, like Alan Watts' reflections, suggests we are not isolated minds, but waves in the same ocean of awareness, split not by space, but by focus, like dreams that drift through the same sleeper. If that's true, then the child throwing stones into a pond, the woman lost in silent prayer, the old man humming to himself as he waters dying plants, they are not strangers. They are chapters, you in another story. Each person is not a new soul, but a new sentence in the same ongoing breath. Why do I care so much about people I've never met? Someone once asked while watching a news report about a far-off tragedy. Why do I feel like I lost something? Her friend, quiet for a moment, simply said, maybe because it was part of you. If compassion is not a virtue but a memory, then love is simply the return of recognition. The ache we feel in others' pain might not be empathy, it might be recollection. What if you've lived 100,000 lives, and the people you meet are echoes left behind? The woman you argued with, the friend you forgot, the stranger you helped once without knowing why. Were they always you? There's something profoundly gentle in this thought, not as philosophy, but as posture. When you hold a child's hand, or forgive someone who never said sorry, perhaps you're not being kind. Perhaps you're just remembering how it felt to be held or to need forgiveness. And cruelty, when it happens, is not evil in this model. It's just amnesia, a temporary forgetting that we're all wearing borrowed names. When one part of the whole hurts another, it's the body attacking itself. Confusion, not malice. Before sleep comes, let your mind walk backward through the day. Every face you saw, blurred by routine, ignored by hurry, try replacing them with your own. Not literally, just lightly. The way a dream lets you be many things at once. A teacher, a child, a fool, a witness. There's a quiet relief in realizing you're not alone because you've never been divided to begin with. Just scattered like sunlight through rain. So tonight, forgive every version of yourself. The one who lied, the one who tried, the one who didn't know any better. Close your eyes gently and let them all come home to you. Next, we drift into a myth more subtle, where darkness doesn't chase light, but waits ahead of it. Darkness moves first. You were taught that light is the fastest thing in the universe, that it races across the cosmos, touching all things, revealing all truth. But beneath that teaching is a quiet myth, older, deeper, harder to articulate. Darkness is what moves first. Not a villain to be conquered, not an absence or a void, but the original stage. Darkness was here before the stars blinked awake. It doesn't retreat from light. It gives light somewhere to go. The mind often frames darkness as danger, the unknown as something to flee. But maybe we've misunderstood the very nature of beginnings. In the oldest stories, the universe began in darkness. Not chaos, not evil, just stillness. A womb rather than a void. Before the first word was spoken, there was the silence that held its breath. Before the first light was seen, there was the presence of unseen potential. In this view, darkness doesn't chase behind the light like a shadow. It walks ahead, patiently preparing space for revelation. Two friends sit under a night sky, their voices hushed as stars slowly fade into view. Do you think the dark is empty? One asks, eyes tracing the curve of the horizon. No, the other says softly. I think it's full of things that don't need to be seen to be real. And that may be closer to the truth than we realize. Modern physics even hints that most of the universe is composed of dark energy and dark matter, things we cannot touch or measure directly, yet things that hold the very shape of galaxies together. What we call light is a narrow sliver of possibility. What we do not see vastly outweighs what we do. To accept darkness is not to accept ignorance. It is to bow, gently, to mystery. To trust that there are truths that don't need to be lit to be known. Darkness is not where knowledge ends. It is where curiosity is born, where the next insight is still curled up, waiting for its name. And in our personal lives, perhaps the same is true. Before we know, we sit in unknowing. Before understanding, we dwell in confusion. These states aren't mistakes, they are gestation. Maybe you're not lost in the dark. Maybe you're becoming, waiting not for rescue, but for revelation. Let the night be soft around you now. Let it hold your shape without needing to define you. You are not yet what you will become, but that does not make you any less whole. Now, we turn to a myth even stranger still, where the thoughts in your head might not belong to you at all. The thoughts that aren't yours. You hear it, quietly, sometimes sharply, a thought sliding across the surface of your awareness. I forgot to call them back. I'm not good enough for this. What if something goes wrong? It comes with such immediacy, such familiarity, that you barely question it. After all, it's in your head. Must be yours, right? But what if it's not? Thoughts don't always knock before entering. They often arrive unannounced, like a song playing softly from a neighbor's apartment. Faint, repetitive, not quite yours, yet oddly persistent. Cognitive science tells us this is more common than we think. Much of what fills your mental landscape is not authored by you, but inherited, conditioned, echoes of something your parents said in a tense moment, the inflection of a teacher's voice when they doubted you, a childhood friend's laugh still layered with a sense of comparison. These thoughts, these fragments, drift through you like radio signals through open air. A woman in the bookstore once looked up from her novel and said to the man beside her, "Sometimes, when I'm thinking, I catch myself sounding like my mother, and I'm not sure when that started." He smiled, a little startled, and replied, "Yeah, my dad used to say, 'Don't be soft,' and now I hear it when I hesitate." But I never agreed with him. They both paused, together in a kind of silent agreement that maybe not all inner voices are inner truths. In mindfulness traditions, they say the mind is like the sky, and thoughts are weather. Fleeting, passing. You are not the rain, not the thunder, not even the wind. You are the expanse they drift through, the stillness that watches. There's something gently liberating about this, that you do not have to obey every thought that rises, that not every worry needs a response, that not every judgment is a verdict. You can let them float, untethered. No need to argue, no need to believe. A thought is not a command. It's a visitor, and not every visitor needs a chair. It's like walking through a busy city street. Voices swirl past you. Conversations, laughter, arguments. You hear them, but they're not yours to carry. Your mind is that street. You don't have to follow every noise into an alley. And if this is true, if your thoughts are not entirely yours, then who are you beneath them? Maybe identity isn't built by the content of your thoughts, but by the clarity with which you witness them. Maybe it's in the quiet decision not to react, in the exhale that says, "Let it pass," in the kindness you show yourself when your mind is loud, but your heart wants peace. Someone once asked, "So if I'm not my thoughts, what am I supposed to trust?" And the reply was gentle. Trust the awareness that noticed the thought in the first place. That noticing, that's you. So let the next thought come, if it must. Watch it rise like mist, shift like light. And when it passes, feel no loss. There's no need to grab or judge or run. Let your mind be the sky, unchanged, unbroken, even as the clouds come and go. Now, drift with me toward the next myth, where time no longer runs forward like a river, but opens like a flower, quietly, in every direction. Time expands, not moves. You were always told time flows forward, like a river, relentless, never pausing, never bending. But tonight, listen more softly, not to the ticking of the clock, but to the subtle rhythm underneath it. Time doesn't rush, it unfolds. Not like water slipping downstream, but like breath. Inhale, hold, release. Expansion, not escape. In the cosmos, time may not be a current dragging everything into the future. Some physicists suggest it's not even moving at all. It's not a path, it's a field, a dimension that stretches as the universe stretches, as galaxies drift and swell apart in silence. Time is not pushing you forward, it's blooming around you. Doesn't it feel like life is rushing by? One voice murmurs in the dark. Maybe that's just how we're taught to watch it. Another replies, what if it's not rushing, but unfolding slowly, and we're the ones who keep sprinting through the petals? If space expands, and time is woven into space, then each second might not be a step away from the past, but a flowering of potential right here. You're not on a train with a single destination. You're inside a living, breathing garden. And your moments aren't leading somewhere, they're becoming something. A memory, for instance, isn't just behind you. It echoes into now. A hope isn't just ahead of you. It's reaching toward you from within. Time, like a galaxy spiraling outward, surrounds you on all sides. You are not at a fixed point in a line. You're in the middle of an ever-widening ripple. And that ripple is not just physics. It's also feeling. Every emotion stretches the hour. Every silence widens the space between minutes. Some nights seem to last forever, not because the clock slows, but because your awareness expands. Like light traveling across the cosmos, your experience of time bends with your breath, your attention, your heart. So, we're not aging forward, the first voice whispers. Number, we're deepening, like roots. Let that image settle. You are not moving away from your childhood, your dreams, your first kiss, or the fears you've shed. They are all blooming from the same center. You're just seeing different petals now. Some fold inward, others stretch out toward stars not yet born. And time holds them all in place. As you drift further into rest, let the idea of movement melt. No more rushing, no more counting. Let your thoughts stretch gently, like light across a night sky so wide it forgets how to end. Because maybe time does not move. Maybe time breathes. And in that breath, you are becoming. Now, we'll step quietly into a myth where forgetting may be the highest form of wisdom. Wisdom through forgetting. You've been taught to remember names, lessons, passwords, goals. We treat forgetting like failure, a lapse, a fault in the brain's machinery. But what if forgetting is a kind of grace? There's a stillness that arrives when you're not trying to remember anything. Not the version of yourself you're supposed to protect. Not the opinions you once held like armor. Just this moment. Quiet. Whole. A man once stood silently in a subway station, holding a notebook he had filled over the years. Scribbled truths, overheard quotes, things he never wanted to forget. Then he slowly tore out each page, let them fall, one by one, to the floor. Someone asked him, "Aren't you afraid you'll lose all that wisdom?" He smiled, almost childlike. "If it's true," he said, "it'll stay in the world, even without me holding it." For centuries, philosophers have spoken of the wisdom of unknowing. Socrates claimed his only wisdom was knowing he knew nothing. In Zen, students sit with riddles that resist reason, not to solve them, but to exhaust the mind until it dissolves. When the intellect gets tired of chasing its tail, something else, calmer, quieter, can emerge. And it's funny how it shows up in ordinary life too. A man enters a library, holding his shoes in his hand instead of wearing them. The librarian asks gently, "Do you always do that?" He blinks, a bit embarrassed. "I forgot I'd taken them off outside," he says. "But it was nice, walking in here barefoot. I noticed how soft the carpet is." They both laugh. It wasn't a mistake. It was presence, brought on by forgetting. Sometimes you only start breathing fully when you forget to hold in your stomach. Sometimes clarity arrives not by grasping harder, but by letting go of the grip altogether. Even the past, which we cherish and preserve in photos and journals, can become too heavy. When memory becomes a mirror you can't stop looking into, it stops reflecting light. It becomes a hallway of doors you already opened, but can't close. What if you could just step out of it? And what if you've already forgotten the most important truths? And that's the point. Maybe they were never meant to be remembered like data, but felt like rain on skin. You don't store the rain, you receive it. A friend once whispered during a long walk, "I stopped trying to remember why I started." And that's when I started to enjoy it. So tonight, don't try to hold on. Let your name float off like mist from a morning lake. Let the roles you play settle like dust at your feet. Let your thoughts dissolve without needing to be solved. There's a wisdom in the space they leave behind, a knowing that doesn't need a name. And in that silence, we'll drift next into a myth where you were never born and never died. Only this breath, and this, and this. The life that was never lived. You sit here, listening. The breath moves in and out, and there's a quiet rhythm beneath your thoughts. It feels like you've always been you, a thread weaving through the years, gathering memories, habits, hopes. But what if that thread was never real? What if the idea of you was just the echo of a voice that never truly spoke? There are teachings, quiet, unsettling ones, that suggest this life you think you're living was never truly yours. Not because it belongs to someone else, but because the you who claims it might not actually exist. Non-duality whispers this softly, like a breeze you can't hold. It doesn't deny experience. It questions the experiencer. Is there a self having a life, or just life, dancing through forms like wind through trees? Hey, do you ever get the feeling you're just watching things happen, not really doing them? "Yeah," comes the reply, slow and unsure. Like my thoughts and feelings are on autopilot. But isn't that just zoning out? Maybe. Or maybe it's the only time we're close to something real, when we stop pretending we're in control. Look at how the ocean doesn't need a name for each wave. It just moves, up, down, forming crests and foam, dissolving again. No wave says, "I was born here," or "I'll end over there." And yet, everything in you has been taught to say, "I am." But who is this I? Trace it back, behind the thought, behind the story. You may find nothing there, not a void, not a lack, just openness, just the space where experience flows. This is not about rejecting your life, your story, or your feelings. It's about noticing that the story might be telling itself. The hands move, the words form, the thoughts arise, but without a puppeteer behind the curtain. And if there's no one pulling the strings, then what is this? This moment, this breath, this noticing? It's life. Not your life, not my life, just life, alive in every sensation, but claimed by no one. There's a strange freedom in that, a gentle unraveling. No pressure to succeed or fail, to fix the past or shape the future. Because without the illusion of a permanent self, there's nothing to be preserved. Only this shimmering present, slipping through your fingers before you can grasp it. I used to think I had a purpose, she says. And now I think maybe life doesn't need me to have one. Maybe it's enough just to be. Let go of the grip that says, this is mine. Let this moment belong to no one. Let this breath rise and fall unclaimed. Not because you are disappearing, but because you were never separate, never owned anything, never even started. You are not in life. You are life. You don't possess a soul like a thing inside a body. You are what the soul has always been pointing to, like the moon's reflection on water, hinting at the sky above. So rest, not as a person falling asleep, but as the stillness that was never disturbed, as the wave that doesn't end because it never began. And now, we step into a myth where even your senses may not be what they seem. The 5 lies of the body. You close your eyes, but the world doesn't vanish, it reshapes. The hum of distant traffic becomes a rhythm. The warmth of the blanket turns into a story. And the room around you, once clear and detailed, now feels like a memory told in fog. That's where we begin, on the edge of the senses. What you call seeing is really just a flicker of reflected light, bouncing, bending, filtered through corneas and lenses until the brain guesses at a shape, a shadow, a color, a movement. But the truth, the majority of light, the full spectrum, is completely invisible to you. Your eyes are not windows. They are projectors, playing a curated version of the world your brain has decided is useful. A voice speaks softly in the night. Do you hear that? Hear what? Exactly. Hearing, too, is a lie wrapped in comfort. What you hear is not the sound itself, but your brain's agreement with it. Some frequencies are edited out before you ever know they were there. Some are bent by emotion. Have you ever noticed how the same sentence sounds kinder from someone you love or sharper from someone you fear? Then there's taste, the great deceiver. Sweetness isn't sugar. It's expectation. You can taste memories. You can taste hope. A single sip of warm tea can carry you home. But if that same tea is offered after heartbreak, it turns bitter on the tongue. Taste doesn't reside on the tongue. It blooms in the mind. Touch is no safer. You think your body ends at the skin, but your sense of touch depends on comparison. A light breeze after heat feels cold. A cold floor feels cruel. Yet the temperature hasn't changed. What's changed is the story your body is telling. Smell? It's a key that fits invisible locks. It bypasses logic. A scent can disarm your defenses faster than any word, awaken a sadness you thought buried, a joy you forgot you knew. Yet it too lies. Every scent is a guess, stitched to memory, colored by experience. So what is the body then, if its 5 voices contradict each other, change depending on mood, and rarely report the whole truth? A man once said, while placing his hand on the window of a moving train, "Sometimes I wonder if this is all just a version of truth I've learned to tolerate." His friend beside him replied, "Maybe that's why we sleep, to forget the edits." If every sense is a storyteller and every story is partial, then maybe your reality is not built from facts, but from survival. A curated hallucination, useful, but untrustworthy. So let yourself drift now, not away from the senses, but beneath them. Rest in that quiet field below sight and sound, where you are not touched, tasted, smelled, or seen, just present. The body may lie, but not everything within you does. There is a kind of knowing that doesn't need evidence, a knowing that sits still, breathes slowly, waits. In that stillness, we'll meet a different myth, one where questions might be more real than the answers we chase. Keep listening, or sleep. Both are forms of returning. Questions that created the world. There is a quiet ache beneath everything, the kind you can't name, but always feel. It's not pain, it's a kind of reaching. As if the universe itself were leaning forward, searching for something it hasn't yet found. Not a conclusion, a question. Before answers, before facts, even before stories, there was only the tilt of curiosity, the faint, trembling hush before speech, and maybe, even before the first light spilled across the void, there was a single wondering. Not a word, but the urge behind it, the need to ask. Have you ever noticed that the most sacred moments in your life didn't arrive with certainty? They began with a pause, with a breath, with someone saying, "What if?" On a quiet balcony one evening, a man turns to his partner and asks softly, "Do you ever wonder why we're even here?" She smiles, not mockingly, but gently, as if cradling the same question in her chest. "All the time. I don't think it's meant to be answered. I think it's meant to keep us awake." And there it is. The world as a question, not a riddle to solve, but a shape to grow into. Every religion was once a gasp. Every scientific law was once a trembling hand reaching toward the stars. Every poem began not with clarity, but with the sting of not knowing. What if reality itself is not solid, but soft, malleable like clay, shaped by the questions we dare to ask of it? What if asking why is not an act of intellect, but of creation? You may think your life is built from memories, choices, or goals, but look closer, and you'll see. It's woven from questions. What do I love? Who am I really? What am I here for? These questions aren't distractions from the journey. They are the journey. And if the universe did not begin with certainty but with mystery, then perhaps we are not here to conquer the unknown, but to be reshaped by it, to let the mystery draw us open again and again, like a tide pulling back the shore. Close your eyes now, not to shut out the world, but to feel the hush underneath it. Let a single question rise on your breath, not to be answered, but to be held. What is this moment asking of you? As it lingers there, soft and unanswered, you might sense it. The world is still unfolding, still becoming, still wondering. And somewhere deep inside, the one asking the question might be you, or perhaps something dreaming through you. Let's rest with that. Let's listen, together. And now we move toward a myth where the dreamer of the world might be asleep within you. The dreamer inside you. There's a kind of silence that feels older than sound, like the quiet before thought, before even breath. And in that quiet, a question stirs not from the world, but from within you. Not what is real, but who is watching. Somewhere deep behind your eyes, beneath memory, beneath habit, beneath even the soft voice you call your own, there may be something else. Not a thought, not a name, but a presence, a dreamer. In ancient Vedic and Gnostic traditions, this world is said to be not merely happening to you, but through you. Not like a stage you perform on, but a projection from the projector you forgot you were holding. It's not that the dream is false. It's that it's so real, so textured with sorrow and joy and bills and weather and laughter and scraped knees, that the dreamer forgot it was dreaming. You forgot. And so waking up isn't about blinking. It's about remembering. Two strangers sit at a bench by a cracked fountain. One of them, eyes scanning the dusk, says softly, Do you ever get the feeling you're waking up inside someone else's sleep? The other chuckles gently, not dismissively, more like someone who recognizes the shape of a thought that's been sitting at the edge of awareness. Maybe, they reply, or maybe we're the same sleeper, just dreaming each other from different sides. There's something gentle in that thought, something that doesn't ask you to believe, but simply to feel, not to decide whether it's real, but to rest in the question. And what if that's what this moment is? A breath taken not by lungs, but by a deeper rhythm that pulses through every life, every face you've ever known, every version of yourself you've ever been? Perhaps the world isn't a place outside you, but a frequency you've tuned into. A show the dreamer plays for its own delight, heartbreak, and forgetting. And so maybe the point isn't to escape the dream, but to forgive it, to soften inside it, to make peace with how real it feels, because that too is part of the design. A man stands in line at a cafe. He reaches the counter and hesitates. The barista smiles and asks, "What'll it be?" And he replies, almost to himself, "Something to help me remember I'm not just here for the coffee." No one laughs, but something shifts, as if the entire room nodded without moving. You don't need to grasp this. You don't need to solve it. You only need to let it hum in the background, like a song you half recognize from childhood. Let your breath soften. Let your face relax. Maybe the dreamer is still asleep inside you, turning in the warmth of this quiet moment, held by the cradle of night. Maybe your heartbeat is the background music of an ancient myth being remembered from the inside out. Let this next silence be the dreamer's sigh, the space between thoughts, the hush before recognition. And now we drift into a place where the lines blur, not just between real and fake, but between self and other, mind and memory, form and reflection. The simulation. Behind the simulation. Some nights, the world feels too neat, too perfectly broken, too precisely random. You reach for your cup, and it's exactly where your hand expects it to be. A bird lands in perfect symmetry on a power line, like a glitch in harmony. And somewhere inside you, a thought whispers, not in words, but in unease. What if none of this is real? We've grown familiar with the idea that we might be living in a simulation, that all of this, trees, time, your laughter, your pain, is code, running quietly inside an unfathomable machine. Not metaphor, but literal possibility. It's a theory born not from science fiction, but from science itself. Quantum particles that behave differently when observed, space-time that dissolves into discrete units at the smallest scale, and mathematical constants that seem too elegant to be accidental. But this segment doesn't pause at that layer. It asks something deeper. What if that simulation, the one we suspect we're living in, is inside another one? And what if that one is inside another? Not just one false world, but a cascade. A hall of mirrors reflecting simulations upon simulations, echoing endlessly beyond our reach. In this nested model of existence, there is no bottom layer, no real behind the unreal, like a dream within a dream where even waking up might just mean entering the next illusion. If that's true, then the desire to find truth outside the system becomes a kind of longing without a landing place. Certainty slips away. And oddly enough, so does despair. Because if there's no final real, then maybe what matters isn't what lies outside the simulation, but how we move inside it. Maybe the myth that really sustains us isn't the one where we escape the code, but the one where we choose meaning within it. A quiet voice speaks in the stillness. So if it's all just layers of illusion, does that mean nothing matters? No, comes the reply, soft but grounded. It means you get to decide what does, again and again. There's something strangely gentle in that, like falling not into emptiness, but into a soft network of interconnected dreams, each one holding the next. You don't need to decode the simulation tonight. You don't need to prove anything or peek behind the curtain. Just breathe. Let the code hold you. Let the illusion be your sky for now. Because what if the truest thing isn't escaping the simulation, but resting inside it with grace? And now, we step into a myth where even randomness might remember. The memory of chaos. A street lamp flickers outside your window, steady, then stammering. It feels random, pointless, but it's not. There's something strangely familiar in the way it blinks, like it's following a rhythm you almost remember but can't quite place. That sensation, that fleeting déjà vu buried in disorder, is where we begin. We've been told that chaos means meaninglessness, a pile of shattered glass, a room upturned by wind. But in the mathematics of the world, chaos is never truly lawless. It's not the opposite of order. It's a disguised cousin, a pattern too deep, too sensitive, too subtle to predict, but still there, beneath hurricanes, beneath the flicker of candlelight, beneath the way your life sometimes spirals out, only to return to a strange, familiar pain. A voice in a coffee shop says, "That's odd. We ran into each other here last year too." And the other person just smiles. Maybe we're always circling the same weather. In chaos theory, a small shift, a butterfly's wing, a glance, a word left unsaid, can alter entire futures. But none of those changes come from nowhere. They emerge from systems that remember, the way clouds curl, the dance of tides, even the tremble in your voice when you speak someone's name you once buried. Is it randomness? Or is it memory, stretched so far it loops in unexpected ways? Even confusion can be a kind of echo, a familiar tune warped by distance. Maybe the questions that haunt you, the detours you regret, aren't mistakes. Maybe they're your inner weather searching for the shape it once had, not to repeat, but to realign. A child once spilled marbles across a classroom floor. They rolled everywhere, bouncing off desks, crashing into corners. The teacher watched silently, then softly said, "Even when everything's rolling away, it's all still inside the room." So too with you. Even when your mind scatters, when your thoughts spiral without direction, there's a strange elegance in the motion. You might not see the pattern now, but it's not lost. It's just not simple. Not all storms are meant to be solved. Some are old songs. The wind is not confused. It simply remembers differently than you do. If chaos holds memory, then maybe your anxiety isn't failure. It's the body keeping score in a language you've forgotten how to speak. Your restlessness is not a flaw. It might just be a rhythm returning. So tonight, you don't need to decode the storm. You don't need to fix the scattered pieces. Let them drift. Let the winds rise and dissolve. Let your thoughts wander like smoke tracing the edges of a room it used to know. Let it be enough that you were here to witness the sway. And as you close your eyes, feel the stillness beneath it all. A silence that remembers every motion, every ache, every spiral. Now, let's drift to a softer paradox, one where the world itself waits to appear until you believe it's there. Belief creates the world. They sat side by side on the edge of the bed, brushing their teeth in silence. The dim glow from the bathroom light cast their reflections in soft watercolor strokes across the mirror. Do you ever feel like Things only happen because you expect them to? She asked, mouth half full, not quite looking up. He paused, toothbrush still in hand. Like what? That the toast burns if I'm already dreading the day? Exactly, she said, rinsing. Or that people seem kinder when you're not afraid of them. There's a gentle mystery in those quiet moments, like how a flower opens not because it knows it's safe, but because something inside trusts the light. Belief, in this sense, is not a conclusion drawn from logic. It is the soil itself, the womb in which reality stirs before it takes form. We often think we are passive observers, that the world exists out there, whole and indifferent, waiting to be recorded by our senses. But again and again, scientifically, psychologically, experientially, we see something stranger. Belief seems to come first. A placebo pill has no chemical power, yet it can slow a heart, numb a pain, or lift a depression, because the mind believed it would. A quantum particle behaves differently depending on whether we watch it. Even color is not out there in the world. It is how the mind interprets wavelengths through the filter of expectation. The world is not just seen, it is agreed upon. Beneath conscious awareness, something in us silently signs the contract. Yes, I will experience this version of events, this shade of blue, this sensation of sadness, this memory as truth, and that agreement, however fragile, however hidden, is sacred. There are philosophies that say this agreement is what creates the world. That belief isn't just a lens, but a blueprint. If so, then faith is not a denial of reality. It is its foundation. We've been taught to see it to believe it. But maybe that's backwards. Perhaps reality only becomes visible after we've already believed in its possibility. Not because we are naive, but because we are powerful. If you wake each morning believing no one will understand you, the world will often comply. If you believe you are unwelcome, invisible, you will find reasons, faces, gestures to prove it. But shift the belief even slightly, and the world softens, not magically, but subtly, as though the universe waits for a signal. What do you believe about this day? About yourself? About what is even real? And maybe, just maybe, it will shape itself around the quiet echo of that answer. In the stillness of the night, there is no need to force belief. Let it loosen. Let it dissolve into presence. You don't have to declare that everything will be okay. You only have to let the possibility in. Let the mind open like a hand unclenching. She lay down beside him, the air filled with the faint scent of lavender and sleep. "Do you think any of this is real?" he asked, already drifting. "I think it becomes real," she whispered, "the moment you trust it enough to feel it." And with that, they disappeared into the space between thought and dream, where belief rests quietly beneath the world and waits for you to breathe. Now, gently, we turn toward a myth where answers are never final, where even truth has wings. The answer that never comes. You've probably felt it. That subtle ache at the edge of a quiet moment. The way the mind leans forward, gently, like it's waiting for something to click into place. A realization, a meaning. The final line in a story you've carried for years. But what if there is no final line? What if the pause never ends? And that's the point. In a narrow hallway at a train station once, a woman asked a stranger, "Is this the right way to the platform?" He nodded, but paused, then added, "It depends on where you think you're going." They both laughed, but her question still hung in the air long after the train had left. Some questions are like that. They ask you back. In Zen teachings, students are often given riddles, koans, that defy logic, not to solve them, but to live with them, like a splinter under the skin of the mind. One of them asks, "What is the sound of one hand clapping?" It's not a riddle in need of an answer. It's a mirror in search of a listener. A child once asked his grandfather, "Why do I have to grow up?" The old man looked at the boy's shoelaces and said, "So you can learn how to untie things that don't need tying anymore." Some responses aren't answers. They're echoes. The world gives us this myth that clarity is waiting just around the bend, that once we find the missing piece, the pain will ease, the confusion will lift, and everything will be aligned. But in mathematics, there are equations that stretch into infinity, never resolving. In physics, particles exist in uncertain states, refusing to be pinned down. And in life, what if the thing we're searching for is not a thing to be held, but a way of being that holds us? You weren't wrong to search. You weren't naive to hope. But perhaps the answer was not late. It was silent, like a letter that never arrives, not because it was lost, but because it was never meant to be written. "I just thought if I kept going, I'd understand why," one voice says quietly in the dark. Another responds, just as softly, "Maybe going is understanding." The ache to resolve becomes the rhythm of living, the reaching, a kind of dance with the mystery. You don't need to stop asking, but you don't need to demand a reply either. There is a sacredness in suspense, a holiness in the hush that follows a question not meant to be answered. So let the tension drop from your shoulders. There's nothing to wait for now, no puzzle left to solve tonight, just this steady, breathing presence. The question, fully alive, fully yours. As you rest in this space between what is known and what is never meant to be, notice the quiet filling in the gaps, not with answers, but with stillness, with softness, with you. Now we turn toward our final descent into myths that loosen even the last divisions between what is real and what is dreamed, what is self and what is sky. The illusion that reveals. You know that feeling when you watch a movie and, for a moment, forget it's not real? The characters feel alive, their joys, their losses, their struggles. You feel them as if they were your own, and then the lights come back on. But somehow, you're not the same. What changed? Was it just a story? Someone asks, and another voice replies, almost whispering. Or was it a mirror? We often speak of illusions as things to escape. We want what's real, what's solid, what doesn't shift beneath us. But some traditions, especially in Advaita Vedanta and Mahayana Buddhism, invite us to look again. They call this illusion Maya, and rather than condemn it as falsehood, they praise it as the stage upon which awakening happens. Not a lie, but a kind of sacred theater. Think of waves crashing against the shore. You see the boundary between ocean and land, between water and sky. But what if the separation is only apparent? The wave isn't truly separate from the sea. It rises, dances for a while, and returns. The illusion was in seeing it as other. But that illusion was necessary to notice the wave at all. In the same way, the illusion of the world doesn't just hide truth. It reveals it by contrast. Through form, we feel formlessness. Through separation, we seek connection. And through the drama of the everyday, forgotten keys, quiet heartbreaks, shared meals, and unexpected laughter, we glimpse a unity that cannot be said, but only sensed. Do you think we're living in a lie? The question drifts between two figures lying on their backs, staring at the stars from a quiet rooftop. Maybe not a lie, one replies, but a lesson dressed in costume. And when the curtain falls, maybe we applaud. The world then may not be truth or illusion. It may be both, like a dream that teaches while it deceives, a kind of cosmic riddle where the puzzle pieces were never missing, just arranged in a way that made us forget we were whole. Illusion is not always the enemy of truth. Sometimes it is the invitation, a painting that points to the artist, a reflection that hints at the ocean behind the glass. And so, as your eyes begin to close, let this illusion cradle you. Don't try to strip it away or force meaning from its folds. Let it play. Let it whisper. Let it dance in your mind like a shadow on the wall that reminds you there's light behind you. Not everything false misleads. Some illusions guide you home. And now, breathe in. We drift toward a myth where identity becomes mist, and the self begins to dissolve into atmosphere. The self that evaporates. There's a moment just before sleep when your name no longer matters, when the shape of your body disappears into the softness of the sheets, and in that moment, something quiet begins to whisper, not from outside, but from the dissolving edge of your own awareness. What if you were never a solid thing at all? We grow up believing in a self that endures, a character with continuity, stitched from memories and plans, choices and shame. But in the deeper traditions of Dzogchen and non-dual teachings, this self is not a structure. It's a shimmer, a temperature, a mood moving across the sky of awareness. Do you ever feel like you're someone different depending on who you're with? I do. Sometimes I wonder which one is really me. And perhaps the answer is none of them, or all, because what you call you might just be how awareness moves through this moment, like mist curling over water, like breath disappearing into dawn. There's nothing wrong with having a story. It can be helpful, even beautiful. But the danger comes when you believe the story is all you are, that the mist is a stone, that the moving is fixed. And so, every time life shifts, relationships, jobs, homes, you panic, as if a part of you has died, but it hasn't. It never was. You seem lighter these days, happier. I stopped trying to be someone. I just started being with things as they are. And suddenly your presence becomes less like a boundary and more like weather. You don't try to control the rain. You don't punish the breeze. So why punish yourself for drifting, changing, even vanishing into silence? If the self is not a structure, but a phenomenon, then nothing needs to be held. Nothing needs to be rescued. You appear just as a cloud appears, only to change shape and pass away. And yet the sky remains untouched. This isn't about losing yourself. It's about not needing to find yourself in the first place. About knowing that each breath you take is a new form, a new self, appearing out of nowhere and leaving nothing behind. Let it soften you. Let it relieve you of the burden of always being someone. A hand on your shoulder might say, you don't need to prove anything. Just sit here. Just breathe. You are not broken. You are just mist moving through light. And when you let go of the effort to stay solid, something beautiful happens. You stop resisting the passing. You stop fearing the fade. Because even in vanishing, you were here for just long enough. Now breathe out and let yourself evaporate, like morning fog slipping into sky. We'll drift now into a myth where dreams may carry more truth than all your waking hours ever dared to. The dream, more real than waking. You open your eyes and call it waking, but what if this too is just another dream, one more stable, but no more true. In the hushed stillness of Tibetan dream yoga, adepts whisper of a secret space, the lucid dream that burns brighter than daylight, where every color hums with impossible clarity and each moment feels carved from sacred stillness. They train not to escape the world, but to witness it with eyes that remain open, even when closed. In those states, you don't watch the dream. You are the dream. And somehow, the dream feels more you than anything else. Do you ever have dreams that feel more honest? Yeah. Sometimes I wake up and wish I could go back, not because it was better, but because it felt like it understood me. Lucid dreamers, psychonauts, poets, all report the same paradox, that within dreams, truth can pierce more deeply than facts ever could. It's not the substance of reality that matters, but the intensity, how fully a moment touches your core. A dream where you lose someone you love can hurt more than any breakup you've had. A vision of light can leave you weeping with gratitude for days. Isn't that strange? That a memory from a dream can stay with you longer than a year lived wide awake? Maybe the dream's lack of boundary gives it space to speak in purer symbols, each one a language of your own subconscious soul. What's real, then? The floor beneath your feet? Or the echo of a dream that never quite leaves your chest? So, are dreams just tricks of the brain? Or is waking just a trick we've agreed to call the real one? Some philosophies suggest that consciousness doesn't care about substance, but about coherence. The real is not what resists your hand, but what refuses to be forgotten. A dream might not be physical, but it can change your life. And if something changes you, if it carves a new shape in your heart, who's to say that's less real than the morning coffee? In fact, the idea that waking life is the highest reality is mostly an assumption. What if it's just a lower resolution dream tuned for function, not meaning? Waking life feels stable, but dreams feel alive. You wake up, yes, but you leave something behind. Something that maybe knew you better. Tonight, when sleep brushes the edges of your thoughts, don't run. Let it take you. Let it lead you into the theater of the subconscious, where every symbol is personal and every shadow holds a secret. Don't be so quick to dismiss what you see there. That kiss, that flight, that song echoing in a language you've never spoken but somehow understood. It wasn't less real. It was just more intimate. Let your mind drift, not away from truth, but into the version of truth that needs no proof, the kind that finds you instead of being found. Rest in the space where logic lets go and meaning arrives, like a whispered name you've always known, but never said aloud. And now, gently, we descend further, to a myth that doesn't ask where the universe is, but whether it's ever been anything but you. The universe within. You tilt your head toward the night sky and feel that familiar hush, like the stars are whispering secrets just beyond your reach. The cold vastness above seems to stretch forever, a silent ocean of light and distance. And in that moment, you feel small, so very small. But what if that feeling of being separate from the cosmos was just a trick of the angle? A woman sitting at a bus stop once said, half to herself, half to the air. It's funny. We stare up looking for answers, but no one thinks to ask where that feeling comes from, the one that pulls you upward. Her friend smiled gently and replied, maybe it comes from the same place the stars do. In the old teachings of Hermetic philosophy, there's a simple phrase that loops through time like a mantra. As above, so below. It means that what lies outside is somehow mirrored within. The heavens reflect the self, and the self reflects the heavens. Modern science, too, joins the echo. Carl Sagan once reminded us, "We are made of star stuff. Every atom in your body was forged in a stellar furnace. Your bones carry calcium cooked inside dying stars. The iron in your blood remembers a supernova. You are not beneath the sky. You are one of its scattered lights, reassembled. And if consciousness, as some physicists and philosophers suggest, doesn't emerge from matter, but instead gives matter its meaning, then what you see out there might be no different than what pulses within. The external world, the distant galaxies, the spiraling nebulae, could be fractals of awareness itself, folded like origami inside your attention. You once stood in front of a mirror made of fogged glass, couldn't see your reflection, only light bending softly through vapor. A friend nearby asked, "What are you looking for?" You said, "I don't know yet, but I think it's looking back." That's the paradox. You search the stars to find yourself, but maybe the self was never lost, just diffused. Not a point, but a pattern. A breath exhaled by something larger, then drawn back in. And if that's true, then you aren't part of the universe. You are the universe. A momentary eye blinking open to see itself in motion. A wave curling back toward the ocean, not knowing it is the ocean. Close your eyes for a moment. The galaxies haven't vanished. They've only returned to their source. You. No need to go anywhere. No need to grasp. You are not outside looking in. You are the in looking out. In the hush between thoughts, between breaths, between stars, there is a kind of remembering. Not of facts, but of form, of how the inside and the outside never really parted. Now rest in that space, the one without edge or center. We're almost there. Next, we reach the final myth, the one that doesn't answer your questions, but dissolves the one who asks. The myth of the seeker. You've been reaching, through questions, through stories, through silence. All this time, perhaps unknowingly, you've been looking for something, a center, a truth, a name for the ache that hums beneath ordinary moments. But here, in the stillness at the edge of your breath, something begins to soften. What if the one who has been seeking was never real? You might feel that notion brush past your mind like wind through a curtain, strange, gentle, and just a little disorienting. Because who are you if not the one trying to understand, the one weaving these thoughts together like string lights in the dark? In non-dual traditions, there is no you apart from the looking. There is just awareness, just life being aware of itself, like a candle trying to illuminate its own flame, never realizing it was light all along. A wave doesn't need to find the ocean. It is the ocean, curled into motion. And just like that, you are not a separate mind scouring the cosmos for truth. You are the unfolding itself, the quiet becoming, the breath noticing itself at last. Two people sit beneath a late sky, legs dangling off a porch. Do you ever feel like you're chasing something you can't name? One of them asks, eyes on a flickering star. All the time, says the other, with a soft laugh. But maybe it's not about finding it. Maybe it's just about sitting here, wondering together. And they fall quiet, not with despair, but with a kind of peace that only comes when you stop trying to name the silence. If the seeker never existed, then there is nothing to resolve, no finish line, no final key to turn. Just this moment, bare and sacred. Just this awareness, watching itself dream, watching itself rest. You have walked through myths and riddles, through illusions and truths that trembled like reflections on water. And all of them, every question, every whisper, has led you back to what you never left. Not a destination, but a home without walls. Not an answer, but the space that cradles all answers and their unraveling. Let this be the end of the search, not because you failed to find what you were looking for, but because what you sought was never missing. It was folded into the looking, woven into the seeking, waiting in the breath that carries you to sleep. Now, no more thoughts, no more myths, just the quiet you've always known. Let it hold you. Let it have you. Good night. Somewhere between your last breath and the one you're about to take, the myths you've wandered through tonight still echo, not as answers, but as gentle questions that no longer need to be solved. Perhaps nothing we said tonight was true. Perhaps all of it was. But what matters is not what the myth means, but how it moves through you, soft as wind, slow as the turning stars, quiet as the thought you didn't catch before falling asleep. Maybe the realest thing is not what can be proven, but what lingers in the silence after proof has given up. And so, if your mind still drifts, let it. If your thoughts still loop, bless them. Not all riddles are here to be cracked. Some just want to hold you while you sleep. Good night. Let the myths keep dreaming you.